Hi and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 167, and today we have that time of the year again. And with the current release schedule, it's happening more and more frequently. But we do have our skeleton crew, and we are going to review Avatar: The Last Airbender for limited. And we're doing it in a slightly different way. We don't go card by card, but we'll go deck by deck, trying to figure out what, in our opinion, will make the color pairs in this set tick, and what cards are pivotal, which cards may be less important, and how do we envision those decks. And today we have with us Sam Pratt.
Hi, everyone.
And Zaki K.
Hi.
Now, maybe, Sam, you can give a couple of words of introduction about yourself so that people know.
Yeah, my name's Sam Pratt. I started a podcast about limited early this year called Rough Drafts.
That is a very succinct yet very telling introduction. And Zaki K.
I'm a glom-on and hanger-on, I suppose. I've played a bunch of limited Magic, but yeah, I'm. You know what, Circovitz? I'm here to be taught a lesson about Avatar.
Yeah, but clearly not to learn, as that mechanic is not in the set.
That we call that one an alley-oop in the business.
Anyway, and as I said, we are looking at our set review from a slightly different angle. We are not evaluating individual cards strictly. We still look at them, so we are still going to talk about individual cards, but we're not giving them A, B, C, D grade, whatever. We are building a deck, and to build a deck, we need some rules, because if we would let limited players choose whatever cards they want, we would end up with like 23 rares and all non-basics. Our skeletons try to be moderately realistic. We have between 0 and 2 rares and mythics in the deck, around 0 to 10 uncommons, where maybe some duplicates are okay, but without pushing it too far. And then we fill up the deck with commons with a maximum 2 of each. And these are some sets of rules, but we are not always super strict about them. Especially when Jason is joining, we are definitely not strict about them, because sometimes you want to showcase what happens if I have access to 4 of this card that I'm hoping no one will be interested in, but I think that there's a deck in it. So we try to be flexible, and we try to approach it to the benefit of the viewer. We want to showcase through those decks what we think the format is going to be about. And of course, to build those decks, if you want to use your own time to build your own versions of the skeletons, we are using sealeddeck.tech. They are not paying us, but they are definitely helping us, because this website is an amazing tool for deck checks, for building your sealed pools on Arena, because Arena sealed builder is absolutely horrendous, and for those skeletons where you can just go to the sealeddeck.tech/sets/TLA, and you will get all the cards from Avatar, and you can build at will your deck skeletons from that particular set. So it's a super cool thing, and the person that runs it is an amazing asset to the limited community, and is very also flexible to introduce changes that the players want, because I think that they also love playing limited, and that is definitely helping there. So with that little ode to sealeddeck.tech, you see I'm not only singing praises of 17 Lands. There are also other websites that are that I cherish. We can move to what I normally start with, and that's the damage-based removal statistics. And we have quite a decent collection of removal this set. A lot of them are lessons, and we're going to learn about lessons just in a second. But we have... Yeah, there you go. Yes, I know what I did. I'm not using words willy-nilly. We have a whole range this time, so it's one of those rare sets in the recent years that actually has some amount of X1 hate. And I think there is a minor reason for that. 20% of the creatures at common have 1 toughness, but there's also a bunch of tokens that have 1 toughness in the set. So dealing with some of the X1s is maybe a useful thing. An example of a removal that can deal with an X1 is Azula Always Lies, which is 2 mana for an instant. It's a lesson. And then it gives -1/-1 until end of turn to 1 creature, or puts a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature, hopefully you control, or you can choose both of those options. And then, this is, of course, a bit more than just killing an X1, because it can be used as a combat trick where you reduce the 3/3 into a 2/2 and make your 2/2 into a 3/3, and it completely flips the combat around and leaves something behind. But still, dealing with 20% of the creatures just like that is a useful thing to have. Then at the 2 damage, we have Firebending Lesson, which I think agree is one of the more powerful commons in the set, at least it looks like, for a couple of reasons, and that has to do with the set mechanics. So we're going to cover that later, but it does kill 51% of the common creatures and around a third of uncommons and rares. And by the way, Other Vinny, I've seen your comment. I'm going to address it after I'm done with the removal part. Also, for 5 mana, it can be deal 5, which will deal with around 95% of creatures in the set at any rarity. So it's a spell that can kill something early and stop you from falling behind, and late in the game can deal with quite a lot of creatures, including the pretty big ones. And again, being a lesson is a bonus. Being an instant speed red card is a bonus, so it looks pretty solid. But anything else that can deal 2 damage will still kill 51% of the common creatures. There are some spells that deal 3 damage, including Lightning Strike. I decided to showcase the Swamp Snare Trap. That's a 3 mana aura. Costs 1 less if it targets a flyer, and it gives -5/-3 to the enchanted creature. So probably 97% of the times when you cast it, it will kill something. And sometimes it will just reduce something to something really, really tiny, which is not optimal, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And this deals with 70% of the common and uncommon creatures and around 60% of the rares, which is a pretty good deal. And especially when you think about Lightning Strike, doing it for 2 mana at instant speed and red, which, hint, hint, is quite important. 4 damage spells, we have also a couple of those. One of them is Iroh's Demonstration, when Uncle Iroh shows why he was called the Dragon of the West. And this one is a modal spell. So first mode is it deals 1 damage to each creature an opponent controls. So you can Plague Wind a board with a lot of 1/1s if someone is playing Go White token deck. And the other option is just deal 4 damage to a target creature. And that kills 85% of commons and 85% of rares, but 93% of uncommons. Why this discrepancy? I mean, rares are normally bigger than other rarities, but in this set, we have a couple of land cycling creatures that are slightly on the bigger side, and that's why it only kills 84% of the common creatures, because those land cyclers are big. And lastly, we have 5 damage spell. As I said, Firebending Lesson can serve as one, but we also have Barrels of Blasting Jelly, which is an artifact that can fix your mana early in the game, and then later you can pay 5 mana, tap it, sacrifice it, and it deals 5 damage to target creature. That kills 92% of commons, 98% of uncommons, and 91% of rares. Before I go to the conditional removal, I will address Other Vinny before I forget. Do I have any plans to make a Magic Numbers episode on Powered Cube data? Yes, I do, but I will do it slightly different. So, because I thought that once the cube is finished, we are starting Avatar, and people will be interested in Avatar. I'm going to continue with the Avatar content for that time. But I'm doing the analysis on the data for the cube for the next iteration. And before the next iteration of the cube, I'm going to make a big episode with a lot of analysis from the first run of the cube to give people background as we move to the second iteration, which I think there will be some changes, of course, but there will be also many similarities. So I'm hoping to find some things through that and give you that content before the next iteration, when it will probably matter the most. Hopefully that fulfills your question. Right. We also have some conditional removal. There is Sunbender's Storm. That's 4 mana for destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. So really big things. And if you don't have a target, you can Earthbend 3. And before we move into Earthbending, I just explain very quickly that basically you put 3 +1/+1 counters on target land. It becomes a 0/0 creature with haste. So it's a 4 mana 3/3 with haste if you have 5 lands, basically. That's the buyout clause of this spell. Looks pretty solid because they will deal with those pesky massive creatures that sometimes are hard to deal with. And the buyout clause is actually reasonable. 4 mana for a 3/3 haste is not a terrible thing, with the caveat that it's not really a 4 mana 3/3 haste on curve, because you will tap all your lands and the creature you will haste out is going to be tapped. Then we have Epic Downfall, and we have actually 3 of those exactly the same kind of effect. The other 2 are in white, where you exile target creature with mana value 3 or greater. And that hits 65%, so around 2/3 of commons, 70% of uncommons, and 80% of rares. So quite a large chunk, and Epic Downfall does it for 2 mana. We've played with that card before. It was good before. I don't see any kind of reason why that card wouldn't be good also in this set, even if it's at sorcery speed. And then last weird conditional removal I found is the Fire Nation Drill. That's 2 black for a legendary artifact vehicle. It's a 6/3 with trample, and crew is 2. But when it enters, you may tap the Fire Nation Drill, and when you do, destroy target creature with power 4 or less. And that hits 88% of commons, 97% of uncommons, and 89% of rares, which means that it's basically 4 mana, kill a creature, and you are left with this 6/3 trample vehicle with not amazing, but quite reasonable crew cost. And I don't know how trinkety that text is going to be, but also for 1 mana you can have permanent your opponent controls lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And I guess it will come super rarely, but there's, I think, a couple of combat tricks that give hexproof that you might blow out. I don't think that there's many hexproof creatures. I don't remember any, at least. And maybe there is something that has indestructible.
But notably, it doesn't get around ward, right?
No, it does not get around ward. But I guess that the idea is that there are conditions already to get around ward, so there's no need to remove it. But hexproof is hard to deal with.
Not that there's a lot of ward in the set, but
no, it's also not much. And there's some, though. Also, there are some sweepers, but realistically, there's only like 1 proper Wrath, and that's the Rise of Sozin. 6 for a saga, and the first chapter is Destroy All Creatures. And then you can choose a card name, search target's opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with the same name, and exile them, and then that player shuffles. That's mainly a constructed, I think, ability. And then for the third chapters, you flip it into a 5/5 creature with some other abilities. It's clearly very strong, but this is the only proper Wrath. There is a couple of conditional Wraths. One is very weird, Destined Confrontation. First of all, it's weird because it's uncommon. But second of all, it's 4 mana, and each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less, and then sacrifices everything else. So as I see, this card looks maybe like a sideboard card against something that has a lot of 5 or more power creatures in the deck, because those creatures automatically would die from that card. But outside of that, or maybe cards that go super wide very quickly, and then you want to stem the bleeding, and maybe they have a bunch of 1/1s and 2/2s, and they will have to sacrifice majority of it, and you keep one big blocker.
Or you play the walls of Bang-Chi, and then you have a 0/30, and your opponent has to sacrifice their creatures.
That's true. I actually thought about it as a card for a commander wall deck that has all creatures with 0 power. But yeah, I mean, then you have to have a mythic on top of that, and 8 mana.
It's perfect with Turtle Ducks.
With Turtle Ducks, it's great. It's true. Turtle Duck, green-white aggro, Wrath. And then there's Day of...
You're cooking now.
Yeah, there's Day of Black Sun, which is X black, and each creature with mana value X or less loses all abilities until end of turn, and then destroy those creatures, which is quite inefficient, because on turn 4 you just kill a bunch of 2-drops, so it's a super late game card. Technically in the late game it is a Wrath, but practically it's not that on turn 4 when you actually would want it. And there's a couple of those small sweepers. Ruinous Waterbending gives things -2/-2 until end of turn. Iro's Demonstration we talked about can ping everything for 1. And we have 2 of the tempo kind of wraths. Avatar's Wrath is you choose up to 1 creature, and then you airbend everything else, which means that they get exiled, and owners of those cards can recast them for 2. And also, until your next turn, your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere else than their hands, which means you get like 1 turn of where they cannot cast the things that you airbended away, but you can. And there's Crushing Wave, also at uncommon, blue, but as an additional spell, you can pay sort of X, but you can pay it with mana or by tapping your own creatures. And then you can tap up to X target creatures and then distribute 3 stun counters among tapped creatures your opponent controls. So you can basically tap out their board, and you can pile the stun counters on 1 creature if it's like a 7/7 that you want to get rid of for a longer time, or just put 1 stun counter on each of their 3 creatures or something like that. So yeah, that will do. And having said that, there's also a couple of sweepers on bonus sheet. I'm not going to go into the bonus sheet content because those are super, super rare. As for the creature sizing, this set is nothing out of the ordinary. As I said, 20% of the things have 1 toughness, and that's bang in the middle of the recent sets. 51% of the creatures die to something that deals 2 damage. That's, again, pretty standard, maybe on the upper side, but not by much. 70% of things that die to a lightning strike. That's, again, bang in the middle of the statistics. And then 84% of things that die to 4 damage spell. And that's a bit on the low side. As I said, it's mainly because there are those land cyclers that change the situation. I think of note, maybe 31% of creatures have 2 toughness. That's on the higher side for any set. So that makes me quite hopeful about the Firebending lesson. And very few 4 toughness creatures in the set. So I don't know what to make out of it, but only 12% of creatures have 4 toughness, and I think average will be probably around 15, 16. These are minor differences because every set right now has a pretty well-defined algorithm on how to design it. So the differences won't be very high. Also on the low side in terms of the 3 X3s in this set, just 20% of them, when in some sets we saw as many as 35%. Cool beans.
Before we get too far ahead, can I ask a question about Waterbending and Crashing Tide? Or Crashing Wave, the weird sweeper?
Yeah.
Can you pay mana for X?
Yeah, you can pay mana or tap creatures and or artifacts.
Okay, so
you can pay 3 mana, tap 2 creatures and a clue token, and you do it for 6.
So it's kind of an X spell. So why doesn't it have like X in the
Because if it had X, it would also have to have improvise and convoke.
Oh, okay. That's just weird, I guess.
It just easier with the mechanic, I think, to word it like that. And then I mean, whoever wants to start taking different bending. So if you don't know anything about Avatar takes place in the universe where there are 4 types of magic: air magic, water magic, earth magic, and fire magic, which, as you might notice, is 1 fewer than magic has. So they had to fit them in colors, and it turns out that black does not have any of their own bending, but black in this set has a mixture of different types of bending, I think. But airbending is air magic, the rarest in the TV show, because there's only 1 person that can actually use it. Yeah, who wants to talk about it? Sam?
I'll take airbending.
Go.
So yeah, there are actually in this show, and it's also rarest in the set. There are only 11 cards that airbend in this set, which is you'll see it's significantly lower than the rest of the mechanics. There's only 1 common, 4 uncommons, and 6 rares or mythics. But it's pretty good. I think the ability is pretty good. It's just not like something you'll see very consistently, I think. So when you airbend something, a permanent, it exiles it. and then its owner can cast it by paying 2 mana. So if you've ever cast an Aven Interrupter, it works a lot like that. Timing rules still apply, which means your opponent can't cast their spells usually until their next turn. And you could also use it most of the time on your own stuff. So it's kind of like a bounce spell that discounts your own cards. You could think of it that way. If you airbend a token, it does destroy it, just like a bounce spell or like a flicker effect. We're going to get to Earthbending later, but so this actually says Airbending lands exiles them forever, which is true, but Earthbending has a clause that says if this permanent would be exiled, return it to the battlefield tapped. So it just basically resets the Earthbending. And Airbending,
Yep.
Airbending
Yeah.
X cost spells sets X equals 0 on recast. Can you airbend spells in this set?
There is the
Swift
Swift Savior.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the what's the Reflector Mage, isn't it? Sort of, or
Spell
Aven Interrupter, really.
Aven Interrupter.
Yeah. It looks pretty solid as a mechanic, and I think we're going to go a bit deeper into that later. But this has hallmarks of a tempo mechanic where Airbending lesson. I think every single one of us called it repulse. And then obviously people in our Discord, the other members of Skeleton Crew that are silent partners on this episode, said, well, actually, it's not repulse. No, it's repulse, and that's it, because we need hot takes on screen.
I think it's better than repulse, because repulse can't hit non-creatures.
Exactly, better repulse.
You can
hit hot takes.
Like,
that's our only currency. Only currency we possess, hot takes. Airbending lesson is a better repulse, and and repulse was very good.
I mean, repulse isn't in the set, so we're not going to get like the data to confirm, but you hack it onto Arena, and then you install 17 lands, and then we see what happens.
Maybe it's on the bonus sheet. We'll never know.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, we'll never know because you never open anything from the bonus sheet. Okay, I will take Waterbending because I don't think that it would be fair for the audience for Zach to explain how it works. Waterbending is the blue mechanic. It revolves around having extra costs to abilities or spells. And Waterbending can be paid with mana or by tapping an artifact or creature. So each tap will represent one extra mana for that. So it's basically sort of between Improvise and Convoke. And it mainly is focusing around blue, as you would expect with water. And examples are, for example, Flexible Waterbender is like 4 mana 2/5, and it is Waterbend 3. This creature has base power and toughness 5/2 until end of turn. Is Ben and Ethan going to claim that this is the best common? What do you think?
They joked about it. I listened to the podcast.
Oh, they did? Yes, get in. But basically that means that you can tap either 3 lands or a clue token, creature, and a land, and it becomes a 5/2. And you can do it anytime. Another thing that you have here is Benevolent River Spirit. That's a blue 4/5 flying ward 2 creature that scries 2 on enter. This looks like pretty cheap cost to cast 4/5 for blue, which means that there's something wrong with it. And then obviously an additional cost to cast the spell, you need to Waterbend 5. So you can cast it for blue and then tap 5 creatures, or you can cast it for 5 mana and tap 2 clue tokens. So it's like a neat way of making those abilities more expensive, more powerful, but give additional ways of doing them. I mean, especially for the ones that can be activated at instant speed, you can sort of build a board stall, and at the end of opponent's turn, you can activate your ability and draw a card, or search your library for something, or get a token of some sort. And because of that, you are going to break the board stall thanks to your engine-y ways of accruing value. And I think that, important thing is that there are 18 cards that make clues centering in Dimir that will supplement this Waterbending. This is, I think, the main token. I know that there's a couple of cards that make food as well that you can use for Waterbending. Obviously, good part of the clues is that you can tap the clue for waterbending, and then you can still sacrifice it because clue does not require tapping for sacrificing. So yeah, I mean, waterbending will want wide boards, lots of trinkets, small creatures, go wide kind of strategies. So ally, one of the supported creature types in the set, will come into play, and looks like a value, small incremental value mechanic. Remains to be seen how good it is. Okay, Zach, do you feel more confident with Earthbending that you did in Waterbending?
I mean,
that's a very modest sure. Are you sure?
I mean, it's a pretty straightforward mechanic. I never played what Zendikar set had Awaken in it, where you like put counters on your lands and they turn into creatures. Those were on like spells. It was on one of the Zendikar sets, which I didn't play. This is a twist on that. Battle for Zendikar. Okay, that was the one that was like notoriously bad for limited, right? People didn't like that set.
Yeah.
That was like the one where green was unplayable, I hear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've heard tales. So this, Wizards likes to do this where they try to fix their mistakes, their sins from the past. They're also very busy creating new sins, but we won't talk about that right now. But the way that they're doing this time is with Earthbending. So you animate a land, you awaken a land, it becomes a 0/0 creature and it has counters on it. But you get a couple different ways of sort of getting spotted value in a way that you weren't in the past. So it's naturally given haste, so you don't have to worry about you played your land drop and then you animated it and you animated the wrong land and now you can't attack. And they also spot you basically the land when the creature dies. So if the creature were to, is it die or exile, or does it leave the battlefield?
It's specifically dies or exiled.
Very interesting. So you can still bounce the land somehow, and then you lose some tempo from it. I suppose they lose the land drop. But otherwise, if it dies or gets exiled, which is notable for Airbending, then it comes into play tapped. So you can't. There was always a push and pull with animating lands in the past that if you had that creature get killed, then now you're suddenly down a land, right? So this is a way of like just giving you that additional value. There's quite a lot of cards that animate lands in the set, and there's also quite a lot of cards that care about counters on your creatures. And whenever you Earthbend, you are putting counters on creatures. So it sort of goes into this whole package. And there's even, I think, 2 lands in the set that have like a keyword on them as if to say, hey, Earthbend me, right? There's like vigilance, and I think there might be one that's like unblockable. So yeah, these seem like this seems like a pretty interesting mechanic. There's still a tension here, right? Because awakening your land isn't free, since you still, you want to use that land for mana, right? If you're attacking with that land, then you can't tap that to cast your spells. So, there's still always a cost with animating a land in this way.
I think also this mechanic can be a little hard to evaluate because it doesn't untap the land. So Badger Mole looks a lot like Summon Fat Chocobo, which was 5 mana, 4/4 plus a 2/2. But if you play this on turn 5, the 2/2 is tapped. Like you have to spend your land you have to tap the land to cast the spell. So you can kind of think of this. I've been thinking of it kind of like a saga, where the chapter 1 is you get a 4/4 and the chapter 2 is you get a 2/2, or like it has like suspend 1 or something like that. But that, like, there's a lesson that's a 4 mana Earthbend 4 that looks like a 4 mana 4/4, and it's like slightly worse than that. So that's something.
There is also an upside there that on turn 6, Badger Mole is a 4/4 and a hasty 2/2.
Yeah. And you can also stack. You can also stack the counters on your already Earthbended lands. Like you can go tall instead of wide, kind of like a mass.
Or my favorite case of that is if you have small Earthbend, like +1/+1 counter on something, they are an excellent sacrifice fodder because yes,
That's
you're
exactly
losing
what I
the
was gonna
counters, but you're getting the lands back. And I think that can be, there's some constructed infinite combos with Bloodgust, Umbral Zealot, and I think that when a creature dies, you Earthbend one, and you can just sacrifice Bloodgust, sacrifice the land that was Earthbended. Bloodgust comes back, you sacrifice some
get the
Bloodgust.
landfill trigger, yeah.
So I think that it's an interesting usage of the Earthbending is in the sacrifice synergies. And there's, for example, a 3-mana spell that is a Harrow basically. So you sacrifice a land and you get 2 lands. If you sacrifice a 1/1 Earthbend land, it comes back. So you basically ramped yourself for +2 rather than +1. Okay, what do we have next? Firebending. Sam, do you want to do firebending?
Yeah. Firebending is. I'll just read the mechanic about it right now. So the first card has Firebending 2, which says whenever this creature attacks, add red, and the mana lasts until end of combat. So it passes through the different combat phases. You can use it after blockers have been declared after damage, but once you go to your second main phase, you can no longer use it, which means you need either activated abilities or instants. There are 27 cards with Firebending. All but 5 of them touch red. So this is a very red central mechanic. I think black probably is second most. Because they're the bad guys. There's 4 common, 12 at uncommon, and then 12 rares and mythics. So a lot of the firebending cards themselves have a way for you to spend the mana that they generate. So for instance, this card up there, Rough Rhino Cavalry, is a 5-mana 5/5 with Firebending 2, and then has Exhaust, 8 mana, put 2 1/1 counters on this creature. It gains Trample till end of turn. And there's a lot of them with cheaper activated abilities as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, Azula is a good example. It just makes a clue on attack, and then obviously you can sacrifice the clue for the mana that it generated.
Yeah, clue is another very good way to dump your firebending mana. If you don't have like a combat trick or an instant, you can always crack a clue. I think like Lightning Strike or the instant
Firebending
shock.
lesson.
Yeah, Firebending Lesson are great places to spend your mana in combat. There's a pretty good combat trick that gives +3/+1 and a clue that gives you 2 ways to spend your mana for firebending. So firebending has a couple of hoops to jump through. Like it says here, there's not much evasion on the cards. You both need to be able to attack with your creature, and you need a way to spend your mana in combat. But mana generation in limited is just generally pretty powerful. And I think if you build your deck right, it's a good way to get ahead on board.
Yeah. I think that covers it. Okay, so next mechanic that we have is lessons. We've seen those in Strixhaven, where they were part of the lesson and learn package, which meant that you could keep your lessons in your sideboard and you play learn spells in your main deck, and then those learn spells can find your lessons from the sideboard. Now here we don't have that kind of a situation. There's no learn spells, but lessons are still a mechanic in a way that there will be some cards that care about lessons. So there's 36 of them across each color. A bunch of them are at common, so they're going to be quite present in your draft. 16 common lessons, so a chunk of your deck might be lessons if you play them. All of them are instants and sorceries. They cluster around the Timur, wedge, shard, whatever it is. And there are some cards that care about lessons in your graveyard specifically. So for example, Combustion Technique is a 2-mana instant lesson. It deals damage equal 2 plus the number of lesson cards in your graveyard to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So if you cast it on turn 2, it just deals 2 damage, most likely. But somewhere later in the game, it can deal 5-6 damage quite easily if you have a deck that is built for lessons. And there's a couple of cards that, there is a card that for 2 mana, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, you pick one of them and put it in your hand. But if you have 3 lessons in your graveyard, you put all of them in your hand. So you basically have a 2-mana draw 3 after you spend some lessons. And each color has sort of theme of those lessons. White has more combat tricks. Blue has counter spells and card draw. Black has -X or discard. And red is a lot of burn spells and impulse draw. And green has some land stuff and maybe some mild graveyard manipulation. There's also a couple of colorless lessons like Zuko's Exile. There's also basically a reprint of environmental sciences. However, I'd like to stress that environmental sciences, which was 2 colorless, get a basic land, put it in your hand, was so good in Strixhaven because, and you're going to like, was so good in Strixhaven because you could learn it. So you always had access to when you needed to. This card is not something like that, so it's not going to be as good as I guess environmental sciences were in Strixhaven. So keep that in mind.
Unless, actually, there's some text on that card that's pretty relevant for...
Oh, there is a kicker, and you can find a shrine. Go on. Talk about shrines, Zach. That's your specialty.
Ooh, okay. Shrines are back from Kamigawa. I think this is like the 4th time we're doing shrines. So all of you Go Shintai of Life's Origin deck commander players, rejoice. You have 5 more tools. Shrines have always been these legendary permanents that have always been legendary, right? We again get 1 of each color. Unlike if you played Neon Dynasty, they are not creatures. They are once again just enchantments, and these are templated differently than those. So they each have an ETB that does a thing for each shrine you control, and then it has a trigger when a shrine enters. It does a thing. So you're sort of paid off for playing them early, and then you're paid off again for playing more of them later. They'll all trigger, and if you're playing them, you want to like get as many of them as you can and keep stacking them, and ideally maybe airbend them and get value from them. But they're all pretty expensive for what they are, right? Like let's read. I don't know. One of the better ones I think is like the Crescent Island Temple, the red one, right? Which is 3 in a red. When it enters, for each shrine you control, you create a 1/1 monk token with prowess. And then whenever a shrine enters, you create a 1/1 red monk creature with token with prowess. If this is the only shrine card in your deck, this is a 4-mana 1/1 monk token. It's terrible, right? So what density do you need to have before you're happy with these? I think this is going to be a real question for deck building. It feels like this is going to be like, you know, the 11th or so deck, like the 5-color soup shrine deck, where you're trying to maximize on all of these. And notably, the green shrine does help you find lands to like play all this stuff. But like, I guess they're supposed to be a package together. What's kind of weird to me is that the white shrine puts a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures. But like, you know, the shrine deck might not have that many creatures, except if you get the red shrine first. So I think this is something that I think the community is going to figure out, how to draft the shrine deck. And probably week 1, you know, your win rate, like mine, might not be so high if you try to force this strategy.
Yeah, I think that with the black being pretty bad, I don't think that deck might be viable.
I mean, like, if you have a lot of shrine, if you like blink the black shrine, airbend black shrine a few times, you can just win the game. But you really need to be doing the thing.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be doing the thing. It's a magic, Christmas, and land. Those 3 words come to my mind when I see those shrines. I mean, it's definitely, I'm going to try it a couple of times in the set and probably sink some gems into it, but I don't see it as a reliable strategy, first of all, because this is based on uncommons and you need to get probably all 5 of them. So I don't know how you exactly end up in the shrines deck. I think that actually the blue one looks best to me because
for sure,
if you have 2 shrines, it's just the divination, which is acceptable in some cases, and if you can bounce it and replay it. You know, there's also boomerang lesson, which lets you bounce something you control to your hand and draw a card and rebuy the shrine. Maybe that's like, this is the way to go, but Not particularly keen on the strategy. But shrines that they never I think made it properly and limited as an archetype that was respected. They were always plans for some kind of casual format, and at the same time a trap for my gems, basically. And I will follow that trap happily because it's nice to try those kind of things. But I see that it's a trap. I know that it's a trap. I'm still going to fall into it, but I know it is one. Right. Clues are also coming back. There are 18 cards that make clues. There are technically 19 cards that make clues, but one of them gives opponent a clue. That is Zuko's something. We've already seen it. Zuko's Exile. So for the sake of your own thing, there are 18. I think that Forecasting Fortune Teller is looking pretty good. It's like 2 mana, Firebending Inspector, but it is a 1/3 and it's in blue. Callous Inspector is also looking pretty good. That's basically a Dusk Legion Zealot, but it's 1 mana cheaper, and it makes a clue rather than drawing a card, and also it does it when it dies. But it has Menace, which is important. And there's a bunch of those things. First of all, there is a Sacrifice theme in white-black. Second of all, there's Waterbending in blue. Third of all, there is Firebending in red. All those mechanics are quite good with clues one way or another. So I think that they're going to play this gluey kind of role in the set where blue card, black card that makes clues can be good in the black-red deck with Firebending, can be good in blue-black draw 2 cards synergy kind of deck, and in black-white sacrifice theme deck. Now, of course, the problem with that, if like black makes a lot of clues, and there are multiple other colors that also want those clues, might be that black's clue package gets diluted and no one really gets enough of it, and weakening those colors. So we're going to see how that one was going to work in the future. Any thoughts about clues on top of what I just said?
Clues are good.
Clues are good. You heard it here first. And probably we already said it before. And there's also Exhaust that comes back from Ether Drift, and that's just peppered in on 8 cards, just to do something with mana.
I wouldn't be surprised if this became Deciduous.
It's a great mechanic.
Set. Yeah.
But from the cards that are here, I think that like Invasion Submersible is looking actively great.
Yeah.
Especially when the Exhaust is Waterbending.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when it is already one artifact that made itself. It's basically a 3/3 mana war. That's what it is. That dies to disenchant for some reason. Oh yeah, and it's worth mentioning. Yeah, there is a minor green-black. Technically, I think has a counters theme. I don't see it as a dominant theme, but technically it is stated as that in the description of the archetype. And last thing we have here is there are double-faced sagas coming. They represent, and I'm the lore specialist here on Avatar, thank you very much, 4 previous avatars before Aang, and that is in order Roku, Kyoshi, Kuruk, and Yangchen. Yangchen must be the oldest one because the avatars change in certain order with the different bending. So
and then
Aang is an airbender.
And then it's Kuruk because next is Korra, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. So that's always good.
Next
and I thought that Roku was just before.
Yeah, I think so.
Aang. That's why Aang was so hunted by the. And also we have Sozin, the Rise of the Sozin, who was the OG baddie firebender that started the firebending nation, becoming this kind of wannabe hegemon empire, using firebending to gain power during a comet event. Here, you heard it first. I'm a Vortos now also. Not only a constructed player, not only a limited player, but also a Vortos specialist. All these have like very good effects, and they flip into an impressive creature, but they are mythics, so when you get them, you get them. A bit about ramp. Who wants to talk about ramping and color fixing?
I'll talk about it. So we have two colorless fixers that are not lands. We have Barrels of Blasting Jelly, which has like a once per turn mana filtering effect, and then you can also pay 5 mana, tap sack it to deal 5 to target creature. We also have Bender's Water Skin, which is a 3 mana rock, so manalith, but you untap it during each other player's untap step. So it can tap for 2 mana turn cycle if you have instants, which there are a lot, and you can also spend that on like clues and stuff. We also have a gold card in Hermitic Herbalist, which is blue-green for a 2/3 human druid ally. It is an ally. This is an uncommon. It's the blue-green uncommon. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color. You can tap it for 2 mana in any combination of colors just for lesson spells. In green, we have quite a bit of mana fixing. We have Cycle of Renewal, which is a lesson. It's kind of like Roiling Regrowth. So sack a land, search for 2 basic lands onto the battlefield tapped. We have Kyoshi Island Plaza, which is the shrine, the green shrine that searches lands. We have Ostrich Horse, which is a 3 mana 3/1. When it enters mill 3, you can put a land from among them into your hand. If you don't, you get a 1/1 counter. So that kind of like, I think it's called Pothole Mole type of effect. Then a couple more lessons. Seismic Sense, where you look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands you control, so potentially very deep, and you get a creature or land from among them. Shared Roots, which is rampant growth on a lesson. 2 mana, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, shuffle. Potentially pretty powerful, especially if you care about lessons. And then we have Unlucky Cabbage Merchant, which is a 2 mana 2/2 that comes with the food. And then it has this text that, like, whenever you sack a food, you can also get a basic land when you're searching your library, but you have to put the merchant back into your library when you do that.
My cabbages!
There it is. Unlucky.
Yeah, I think that worth noting, Ostrich Horse, like in a typical scenario when you have no lands anymore in your hand, you cast it on turn 3, it's turn 3, that has like 86% hit rate. It would have been much better if it milled 4 cards, as then you would get a 93% hit rate, but you get only 86%. So a lot of the time it's going to be a 3 mana 4/2. But maybe sometimes you just want it to be a 4 mana 3 mana 4/2 because there's some 4 power synergies.
Oh yeah, also Gruul has 4 power.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. We also have lands. There is a cycle of 10 common dual lands. Each of them can be sacrificed for 4 mana to draw a card. And there is 2 filter lands. As it said, even the rare land only gives you mana of any color for allies. So there is not so much land fixing, but I think that with the shared roots at uncommon and especially cycle of renewal at common, fixing won't be a problem if you need to fix. And it looks to me like the cycle of renewal type of fixing is pretty good for both 3-color fixing and sort of 5-color green-centric fixing, which is interesting what we want to do with it. I'm not so sure because technically those things should be done for shrines, but I don't think shrines are going to be strong enough.
The common tap lands are also in the land slot.
So they're 50% of the land slot, which means that there will be more like uncommon-ish. Normally, common cards are 2.25 copies per pod, per draft pod. The lands will be probably around 1.2 copies per pod. And uncommon is 0.9. So they're closer to uncommons than to commons. The more you know. And there are a lot of gold cards because there's a full cycle of common hybrid cards. There's 20 gold uncommons. There is 1 gold card and 1 hybrid card. And I think that every single hybrid card is a legendary creature. And they are all multi-pipped. So they are not the kind of hybrids that you're going to be splashing. They are the kind of hybrids that you really want to commit to the color pair because they will cost like Hama the Bloodbender, for example, 2 hybrid Dimir, hybrid Dimir, hybrid Dimir. That card is only playable in blue-black or in mono-blue or in mono-black. And I mentioned the mono deck because I think that mono decks are somewhat supported. Every card has like one special uncommon that gives you amazing benefits if you're monocolored. Plus, there are like 20 something rares in multicolor as well. On top of that, that depict the beloved characters from the show and Fire Lord Zuko. Okay, so we're done with the introductions. They are needed because we want to set you up for the background of the set, what's going on, what are the mechanistic ramifications. And with that, we can move to individual draft skeletons. For each of them, because I am now retired from building my own skeletons as I'm lazy, I decided that my role is better as a moderator. And as a moderator, I'm preparing a sort of lay of the landslide for each of the color pairs. What do we have? What hybrids are there? How do they look like? What are the enablers for the strategy? And what are the payoffs for the strategy? And maybe select a couple of key cards. But this is nothing to do with the skeletons that were built. I think that blue-white, we're going to see Sam's deck. I'm just showcasing it to you so that you get the sort of dramatis personae introduced through my introduction slide in a structured way. And as I said, we have a common hybrid. In this case, it's Cat Owl. 3 and a hybrid Azorius for a 3/3 flyer, and when it attacks, you can untap target artifact or creature. So it's baseline. It's a 4 mana 3/3 vigilance with flying. And then we have the uncommon, the legendary hybrid, which is Sokka Lateral Strategies. That's 1 hybrid Azorius. Legendary creature, ally, which is sometimes important, and it has vigilance. It's a 2/4, and when it and at least one other creature attacks, you draw a card. I think that 2/4 is pretty good stat line for a 3-drop, especially when it has vigilance in a set that has Waterbending, so you can reuse it, and in an archetype that wants to have flyers, and those flyers will attack more freely than other creatures, which means you're likely to have that second attacker to accompany Sokka and draw a card, which seems like a pretty good payoff, actually. The signpost uncommon for that is Air Nomad Legacy, and it's an enchantment for blue and a white. When it enters, you make a clue, and then creatures you control with flying get a +1/+1. So it's not a 2-drop, really. It's something that you play later in the game when you already have some kind of board of flyers developed, and pumps your team, and you get the clue to replace it over time. I think as enablers, I selected flying creatures that are relatively cheap. I have First Time Flyer. That's a 2 mana 1/2 flyer, but it gets +1/+1 as long as there's a lesson card in your graveyard, which will happen frequently, I think. And that means that in those scenarios, it's going to be a 2/3 flyer for 2, which is very good rate. And sometimes it just be a 1/2. But I guess you need to make sure that your deck has a sufficient number of lessons in it for it to be a useful card.
Wait,
and there's also
Stormcrow ain't cutting it no more?
No. I'm sorry to break it. And then Iguana Pirate, 3 mana 2/2 flying vigilance prowess, which is a great French vanilla creature. I assume that prowess counts as French vanilla. It attacks for potentially a lot. It can waterbend on whenever you want it because it's vigilance, and it's another flyer that you can boost with your Air Nomad Legacy. And there's a bunch of payoffs. Not specific ones. I think only Teo Spirited Glider is a payoff specifically for flying, because it's a 4 mana 1/4 with flying, and whenever one or more creatures you control with flying attack, draw a card and discard a card. When you discard a non-land card, this way you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So sort of like a poor person's Rafine, basically. Oh, a 1/4 flyer that will connive onto things. It still looks pretty solid because if you trigger it once, if you play it on turn 4 and you have an active flyer, you put like 2/5 flying stats on board, which is not a terrible thing. And yeah, I think that cards like Airbending Lessons are going to be obviously good in this deck. Airbender's Reversal looks like an interesting one because it's also a lesson and it destroys target attacking creature, which is normally a card that is limited to be played in control decks. But if you have a deck that is built around flyers, your opponent is going to be attacking you on the ground, you're attacking them on the flyer, 2 trains passing in the night. Things that kill attacking creatures all of a sudden become much better. And there is also like deal 4 to an attacker. That's also might be good in this kind of a flying deck as a cheap removal that allows you to apply pressure but slow down your opponents so that your flying creatures are usually 1 mana more expensive than the equivalent sized non-flying creatures. And that's why you need to gain that tempo elsewhere. And with cards like Boomerang Basics, which can bounce something for 1 mana, or Lost Days that for 5 mana put something second from the top and creates you a clue token. All right. How many of the cards that I put on the slide did you put in your deck, Sam?
Probably not that many. Actually, a decent amount.
Okay, let's see what you have there.
Yeah, so I want to back up.
Yeah. You built it around Waterbending, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to back up to talking about the abundance of hybrid mana. There's only one cycle of actual gold cards in the set, and that is the actual 2-color signpost uncommons. So there's the cycle of gold cards, and then there are the hybrid cards. Some of them are triple pipped and kind of hard to splash. Some of them are double pipped, and a double pip card, you could just think of it like a double white card. Like there's the green-white signpost, or the green-white hybrid card at uncommon. Suki, I think, is a very strong white aggro card, and I'm very happy to play that in like a base white aggro deck that's like white-red, white-green. So I think that's gonna kind of be the standard, is you want to be more heavier one base color and kind of splash the other color. And maybe this deck isn't the best example of that because my 2-drop slot is entirely white cards. And I forgot to put Forecasting Fortune Teller. Oh, no, I did. I just didn't sort it quite properly here. But basically, I think that blue-white, you can build like a flyer synergy deck off the blue-white uncommon if you happen to open it. But I also think you can build a white go-wide deck that just kind of splashes a couple of good blue cards. And I think the one that I'm most excited about is forecasting, like the blue deck that is more reactive, built around Waterbending, specifically because of Forecasting Fortune Teller at common, which is a 2-mana 1/3. When it enters, create a clue token. I think this card is a 1/3 body. It blocks decently well, and the clue token, obviously, this is like asymptotic to Thraben Inspector, which is a very, very, very good limited card. So in this deck, sorry, the curve's a little wonky, but I guess those are all 2-drops. Yeah.
That's my fault. That's my fault. I split this curve because the 2-drop slot was just too big, and then I wouldn't be able to fit it on the slide. So I just split the 2-drop slot into two columns.
I like to be a little optimistic building my skeletons that I'm gonna have that many 2-drops.
This is a 7-drop, yeah. It's not a 2-drop.
Yeah, kind of. So I think that when you're building a base blue deck in this format, whether this is base blue white or base blue black, or even some versions of blue red, I think that you're going to be very good at blocking and holding up mana. And I think that this is very opposed to what red wants to do with Firebending, which is attack and use mana in combat. So I think that the blue decks are very well set up to hold up mana on your opponent's turn, like not attack, keep your creatures back. Like the Forecasting Fortune Teller is a very good double blocker because it has a high toughness, and react to what your opponent's doing in combat. And I'm very interested to see how that pans out with Firebending wanting you to so proactively spend their mana. So I think blue-white specifically has a lot going for it defensively. Because of Airbender's Reversal, which we saw is the uncommon that can either airbend your own creature or destroy an attacking creature. And then there's also a white common called Razor Rings, which is 2 mana instant in white deal 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature, and gain life equal to the excess damage this way. So I think that white, yep, you can see their razor rings. I think that white in particular has a couple things that are really good at messing up your opponent's combat on when they attack you. Like you can set up a double block, they go to blow you out with their firebending mana, and you have held up mana for razor rings. I also think that there are a lot of waterbending creatures like Water Tribe Rallier on the screen here, which is a 2-mana 2/2 with Waterbend 5. Look at the top 4, you get a creature with power 3 or greater or less. And also Katara Bending Prodigy, which has a Waterbend 6 draw card ability. Like if you can play really well at instant speed, hold up mana, hold back your creatures to block, you can really take advantage of red decks that want to very proactively like attack you, spend the mana on in their combat step. You can try to set yourself to blow them out. And then like if you're already ahead, you're not facing an aggro deck, I think that Waterbending is a really good mana sink to be able to just like spend all your mana and spend outsized amounts of mana versus your opponent throughout the game. So I'm pretty excited about blue-white, this kind of like control deck. But I think that you can also build blue-white as like a base white aggro deck, and then just like kind of splashing blue for some tempo cards like the Submersible, or even the blue-white River Spirit, which is a 2-mana 4/5 that you have to waterbend 5 as an additional cost and has flying and ward 2. I think that could be also a pretty good go wide payoff. We'll see in some of the other like white base decks, skeletons here that I built like more traditional go wide white decks.
So I have a couple of questions, obviously, because that's my job ish. So what is the idea behind Sokka in this deck? Because Sokka in my head is more like an aggressive creature. When you want to be proactively planning to attack, you probably want to have evasion.
I just think the card is really good. I think I put it in all of my white skeletons. And I think even on defense, like it's a 2/4 vigilance. I think in like a mid-range mirror or like a slower mirror, it's pretty easy to attack with Sokka and like a flyer or something like that. Or even your forecasting fortune teller could probably get in and draw a card when you need it. I just think the card's really strong. Seems like one of the better uncommons in the set, and I think it just plays well in basically any deck that can cast it reliably.
Does Sokka and the penguin thing work as I think it does?
Yes, the Otter Penguin.
Yeah.
Otter Penguin is a 2-mana 2/1 in blue at common that gets +1/+2 whenever you draw your second card.
And Sokka draws on attacks, yeah.
Yeah. So you could attack.
And the penguin becomes unblockable. Yeah, that's the important part.
It becomes unblockable. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the important part. That's the important part.
And if you're a heavy enough base blue deck, that's available to any blue color combination.
Yeah. Okay, that's 2 things. Another thing that I had specifically about the card, there is the 5-mana 4/3 flyer that has Waterbending 4 to loot. Are you interested in that card in this kind of deck?
I would.
Or are you just too much
if I needed to? But I don't like that card. It's the lightning strike.
That's the lightning strike is going to wreck it a lot. So we can talk about Katara later, because I know that you have it in the later deck, and I think I highlighted there. But I'm interested to talk a bit more about that card in the future. Okay, and what's about the Koi?
I just threw it in there. I think you're gonna play the Koi sometimes. If you replace that with the 5-mana 4/3, I wouldn't blink twice. Sometimes you just need like a top end thing that can win a game.
Cool. All right.
One more comparison I want to make with waterbending that might come up later as well is like the waterbending being able to tap your creatures. Like you just hold your creatures back to block, and then you can activate waterbending on your opponent's turn. There's a handful of cards where that works, where with Water Tribe Rallier and Katara. I think a really good comparison was Larder Zombie and Scob Wrangler in Midnight Hunt, which were cards that you could tap 3 creatures to do an effect, and those ended up playing way better than they looked. And I think waterbending, some of the waterbending spells will have a similar play pattern to those.
So basically, Lost Days is a better Revenge of the Drowned. That's
Exactly.
what you're trying to say. I mean, I love that card so much, by the way. But we can talk about it later when it appears in some decks, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Drown was 4 mana, right?
Yeah. No, I'm joking. I'm just trying to put words in Sam's mouth that he never said. That's my goal in life.
That you teach that at the comedy class, right?
No, it's not comedy class. It's you wouldn't get you wouldn't get it. It's about being funny. Earth Rumble Ramp, red green. What do we have here? And I actually, when I read the description of what he said about red green, I don't get it. But okay, I guess it's that we're ramping to big things, and Earth Rumble means chonkers, I guess. Whatever it is, I don't think it's the most supported archetype. I'm not saying it's a bad archetype in terms of what the results we're going to get, but it sort of mixes up ramping and 4 power, which of course means that you will get creatures that get 4 power or have 4 power, like the hybrid Earth Rumble Wrestlers, 3 and a hybrid Gruul, a 3/4 with reach, but it gets +1/+0 and has trample as long as you control a land creature. So if you Earthbend, basically, or a land entered battlefield under your control this turn, and that will of course then have some trigger power 4. You have Uncle Iroh, 1 Gruul for a 4/2 with Firebending 1, and lesson spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. Which is a neat way of being a mana dork, I guess, if you have lessons in your deck. Signpost Bitter Work is 1 red green for an enchantment. Whenever you attack a player with 1 or more creatures with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. So it's sort of coastal piracy, I guess. And then it has Exhaust 4. You can Earthbend 4, which means you create this 4/4 hasty land. Hopefully, when you have 5 lands on board, so you can keep 1 to attack, and you can then get the trigger. How do you like the Signpost?
It's a cool card. I don't hate it. I also don't love it, but
I guess it's like sort of like good when you're ahead, sort of idea. I do like that it has the buyout clause of the making a hasty 4/4. That's a neat thing.
Yeah, but at like 7, you have to sink 7 mana into it. It's quite an investment.
Yep.
And,
You hopefully cast it when you already have a 4 power creature active. And
if you have an Earthbent land already, you can represent this as a combat trick, which is kind of nice.
That is correct as well. So I didn't know really what to put as enablers. I put Ostrich Horse because Ostrich Horse was one of the few things that has 4 power that costs 3 mana. If you really want, Ostrich Horse always can be a 4 to vanilla because you can fail to find the land. And then I put Earthbending Lesson. That's a 4 mana sorcery lesson costing 1 green and 3 colorless. And you just Earthbend 4. So you just turn a land into a hasty 4/4. And that makes 4 power, I guess, and has things to do with lands, which might fulfill the vague description of Earth Rumble Ramp.
I mean, it's a pretty nice curve from with Uncle Iroh into Earthbending Lesson.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool curve. Because, of course, Uncle Iroh will make Earthbending Lesson cost 3, and therefore you will have an untapped land that will be able to attack. No idea where to fit Bitter Work into that curve, but it must appear later. I put in a couple of payoffs.
Bitter Work, it's exhausting. It describes working with Circlevits, more or less.
Exactly. I picked a couple of payoffs. One of them I think is very bad. Tiger Dillo. 2 mana for a 4/3, but it has a big drawback. It can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater and still somehow dies to Lightning Strike. I don't think that this card is going to be, despite being a 2 mana 4/3, is going to be a playable one, but it's certainly a payoff for power 4 or greater. Rakuous Audience looks much better to me. That's 2 mana 2/1, which is clearly better than 2 mana 4/3. Because this one actually taps for green, Or if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, taps for double green. And that can ramp you quite rapidly. And I have another one, Boulder, ready to rumble. 3 and a green for a 4/4. And whenever Boulder attacks, you Earthbend X, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 4 or greater. Of course, it being a creature with power 4 or greater means you basically Earthbend 1 by default when you do that. I think Boulder might be also quite cool in some kind of a black-green sacrifice deck.
It reminds me of that card from Dragon Storm, the one that the 4-drop that
Endure one.
Yeah, endure
Yeah.
on attacks. I guess I could put counters on itself too, right?
It was a 5-drop. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. It was endure too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
This one can be interesting in the moments where, well, you have a lot of creatures with power 4 or greater, which is moments where you're probably winning the game anyway.
Yeah.
This thing's also just better baseline stats as a 4/4/4/4.
Yeah. I think that one card that I specifically liked in the red-green was the Earth Rumble. 4 mana sorcery, Earthbend 2, and when you do that, up to 1 target creature you control fights target creature an opponent controls. And I like it here because it seems like there is a density of Earthbending that will maybe let you put like 6 counters on one land, and then this becomes like a good fight spell because it makes your creature bigger. It's like a Savage Smash then, basically. Which now I think about it, it's just Savage Smash, but more expensive. Cool. Who made this Earth Rumble ramp deck?
I think this was mine.
I think that, I might have put a bunch of the Allied Color Purse as yours.
Okay. Yeah, as you can see, this is a very green deck. Continuing the trend.
Can I stop you there?
Yes.
Just to give you a bit of the insight into our back workings, you sent me the list of the 10 archetypes, and I noticed the one thing, and I maybe want you to speculate before you go into the Gruul. Every single one of them you made with highlighting which color is dominant by capitalizing the letters. Do you think that this is going to be the format where disproportional decks are going to be a thing? Like you either go heavy blue or heavy white, and that's going to be 2 different flavors of blue-white or something like that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
yeah.
And also, by the way,
There's
also
chaos.
you never capitalized black, and maybe
That
we can
is
talk
also
about
true.
it. And maybe we can talk about it when we move to black decks. But I want to highlight it before I forget about it.
Yeah,
Okay,
and that wasn't necessarily me picking which color I think is going to be dominant, because like I said, for blue white, I think that white splashing blue is really good too. But that's just what I do think that's what you're going to want to lean towards here, because as you can see, like I have Suki Kyoshi Warrior in here, which is a 4 mana star 4 power.
you mean Adeline?
Yeah, it's Adeline. Yeah, power equal to the number of creatures you control. Whenever she attacks, you make a tapped and attacking 1/1, I believe. So I think that's just a really strong card, and like this deck is set up. You have Raucous Audience on 2. So you can ramp into Suki on turn 3. I think that's a really strong curve, and like it's double green, but double green is very castable in a heavy base green deck. Not a huge believer in red green, but I think if you just want to build a stompy deck and you pick up a couple firebending lessons, I think this is a totally fine place to be for like a mid-range stompy green deck. You have your Badger Moles at the top of the curve. That's the 5 mana 4/4 Earthbend 2. I think that green has some really good uncommons, like Flopsy Boomy's Buddy, which is a 6 mana 4/4, I think. Put a 1/1 counter on all creatures you control. So it's basically a 6 mana 5/5, and then has the creatures you control can't be blocked except by more than one creature, I think. I think that's the text it has. I also put in Rockalanche here, which is a 3 mana lesson Earthbend X, where X is the number of forests you control, and also is flashback. This one I have been talked up a little bit. I don't know if it's gonna be good enough for a deck like this, but I do think it's worth building around, especially because I think green is one of the stronger color identities here. So I think that getting 2 reasonably sized bodies is pretty good. I don't think you're going to be casting this on turn 3 very often. Kind of reminds me of Mask of the Jade Crafter, which was a card I liked a lot in Brothers War. And I think it is going to be pretty good if you can get to, say, 10 forests in your mana base. So
I think doesn't each color have like a uncommon monocolor payoff, and then there's some at rare too.
Yeah. There's each color has one uncommon payoff. Green one, Earthbend X, where X is number of forest. White one, make X 1/1 allies, where X is number of planes. Black is a 7 mana 3/2 lifelinker that deals damage equal to number of swamps you control when it enters, which is of course lifelink damage. And then red is sort of cascading into things, and you can cast it for free if the casting cost is not larger than number of mountains you control. And blue is the tome, and you can tap 6 mana, tap it to draw a card, but the ability costs 1 less for each island you control. So you technically tap it to draw a card or something.
I didn't build any decks with the black one, but that would be a reason to be heavy black, I think.
No, that's definitely. I think that this card is good even if you're like 9.
Yeah, I think
7,
8 or 9.
9, 8.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, I will have to have some questions. That's by the way, I completely missed that Flopsy puts counters on itself. I evaluated the card and said it's okay, but it's just a 4/4. But it actually is a 5/5. You're right. Yeah. So I will put an extra grade on that card when I'm evaluating it myself. What do we have? Bitter Work. Toph, you like that card, it seems to me as well.
Yes. Yeah. I think Toph is really good. Let me read the text. It is a 3 mana. It's an uncommon. It is 3 mana star 3. When she enters Earthbend 2, and her power is equal to the number of 1/1 counters on lands you control, which is, what is that? 4/5 worth of stats for 3 mana over 2 bodies.
See, I have the technology.
Oh, there you go. Which is kind of an absurd rate. The land is tapped, but a lot of stats over 2 bodies is pretty ridiculous. So I think this card is very, very strong.
Yeah, and there are also some instant ways of putting counters on your lands sometimes, which can be a combat trick, double combat trick in that particular case. I also noticed that you put Fire Sages. Is that purely on because you think it's a powerful 2-drop? Fire Sages.
It's an uncommon.
I will have to put it in this my bot. There you go. Fire Sages. 2/2 for a 2, and it can for 1 RR you put a +1/+2 counter on this creature, but it has Firebending 1, so it at least spots you 1 red.
Yeah, I think this card is a pretty good 2-drop, like above average 2-drop. You notice you have 2 Firebending lessons to spend the mana on here. There's other like combat tricks, like Origin of Metal Bending is like a Snakeskin Veil mixed with Disenchant. That is another thing to do at instant speed. Rocky Rebuke is a way to spend the mana. So like it's not going to be at its best here, but I think it's a fine 2-drop. I just included it. You could probably, I think a better 2-drop for me to include would have been the common green one that has exhaust 6 mana Earthbend 4 or something like that. Earthbend 2 put 2 counters on it. I think that card, I kind of overlooked it when I was making these. I think that card's pretty strong too. Probably a better fit.
Cool. I think that this is also yours. So let's maybe move to something that Zach came up with, which would be White-Black Sacrifice.
Oh, that is also not mine. I did Is It.
Who did you did Is It?
And I also did, if we want to do green-black, I did green-black.
Okay, so green-black technically has the +1/+1 counter scheme.
Yeah.
Well, obviously the hybrid looks a bit underwhelming to me. Earth Village Ruffians 2 and a hybrid Golgari for a 3/1 when it dies Earthbend 2. I don't like my 3 mana 3/1s. I like, well, unless they make a lander token, but I guess this is the thing. They think that Earthbend 2 is as good as a lander token. So let's see how that one works. The legendary hybrid and uncommon is Longfang, Grand Secretariat, 1 Golgari for a 2/3 creature. Whenever another creature you control or land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on another creature you control. So basically anything dies is growing something else. I don't know if that's... It looks okay-ish, I guess, but is it that great? Then the signpost is Daily Agents, 3 black green for a human soldier. It's a 3/4, and whenever it enters, you Earthbend 1, and then you Earthbend 1 again. And whenever this creature attacks, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with a +1/+1 counters on them. So technically, when it enters, it can make 2 lands 1/1s, and then you can attack with it, and it drains for 2. Then there are some enablers, and I also was struggling to find good enablers for that. I found Fire Nation, and I tried to find repetitive one or value ones. Fire Nation Engineer was the most obvious one. It's a 3-mana 3/2 with raid. At the beginning of your end step, if you attack this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target on another target creature or vehicle you control. So I guess that the play pattern should be play a 2-drop, attack with the 2-drop, 2-drop survives, cast Fire Nation Engineer, your 2-drop becomes bigger, and maybe it will enable future attacks for it or whatever. Or maybe it will enable an attack where it will trade, but then you can cast your 4-drop, and that 4-drop will become bigger and hopefully get somewhere from there. So I think it's better than other versions of this card, because normally those things were putting counters on themselves. Distributing counters elsewhere might be a slightly better way of doing with it. There is a couple of payoffs for counters. And yeah, I think that I selected Toph, because Toph will have power equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on lands you control. So that's technically a counter payoff, but more Airbending payoff than anything. We have Buzzard Wasp Colony, and that's a 4-mana 2/2 with flying. When it enters, you may sacrifice an artifact or a creature, and if you do, you draw a card. But also, whenever another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, you put its counters on the Buzzard Wasp Colony. So it's like a good way of, okay, I'm putting my counter creatures, I'm smashing them into you, they die, they put their counters on my Buzzard Wasp Colony, and at some stage the Buzzard Wasp Colony will become a problem. And there is Earth Kingdom General, 4 mana for the 2/2, Earth bends 2 when it enters, and then when you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, you may gain that much life. Do this only once each turn. So they worded it in such a way that we'll have to do a lot of clicking extra. But you'll gain some life for the effort, so I guess that's fine. So what did you build, Zach?
So I don't really see this as a very aggressive deck. I feel like you're trying to grind your opponent out, and I think primarily you're trying to get your +1/+1 counters through Earthbending, right? You animate your lands, and then you can sacrifice those lands for value, or you can trade them off in combat. And you want to just get into a position where every time you do that, you are just like getting a half a card up on your opponent, or getting all these triggers and eventually grinding them out of the game. And in fact, there's more ways to do that. I even put in this deck, and come to think of it, there's the Harrow card, and then I believe there's a black card that lets you it's like basically the sacrifice of one of your guys to kill a thing kind of card we get in every set that you can use to trigger your Buzzard Wasp Colony and various sacrifice things. There's also this beetle-headed merchant, which will, when it enters, you can sacrifice things, and then it cares about counters as well. And I think this is a good, also a deck that cares. about having they'll see there's some self-mill in this set. You have the ostrich horse. There's also, I saw in Sam's build of this deck, Zuko's Conviction, which I think is kind of nice with the land cyclers here. You have a lot of boom booms in the deck that you can recur, and it kind of feeds in this package of just grinding your opponent out and building a bigger board as you go.
Yeah, Zuko's Conviction, just for the audience, just an instant for black, and you can raise that at instant, so return creature from graveyard to hand, or you can kick it for 5 mana and then 5 mana in total, and then you just reanimate something at instant speed, but the creature that is reanimated comes to the battlefield tapped.
And so the payoffs, right? You also have, it wasn't on your list, but there's also Hog Monkey.
Yeah, there is a Hog Monkey here somewhere, but I don't think I have it highlighted. It's a 3 mana 3/2 with Overload. Put 2+1/+1 counters on it for 5 mana, I think, or 6.
Yes,
and then creature once a turn, a creature with counters you control gains menace. So
so it's a way to sort of push in damage, and I think you get some value out of like some things that other players might not want as much. For example, Azula Oli's Lies is a very effective trick in this deck.
We talked about that in this removal stats. That's the one that gives -1/-1 and puts a +1/+1 counter.
And other than that, is just sort of doing grindy Golgari stoof.
At least it's not Golgari Graveyard this time, clearly. I mean, there might be some things you can do with the graveyard, but it's not, your standard, oh, Golgari, let's start doing graveyard. If anything, it might be more sacrificey in a way, but
yes,
it will have to lean very heavily on black for that, because green does not have any sacrifice stuff. Unlike white, which has some sacrifice things. How do we feel about Golgari in general?
Interesting question. I don't think it's bad. I think Earthbending can be quite powerful. I think you can get into some situations where like you're going to have value that your opponent's not going to be able to deal with, especially if you can like attack with dually agents a few times, because that is quite scary. That it reminds me of that card from Duskmourn, Arabella, right? The doll, right? Since that card was like really scary, and this is of course a lot more mana, but it's also spotting you 2 1/1s. Now you need to animate your lands, but this deck really cares about that.
Yep, maybe it's better than I think. It's 5 mana is a lot though for something that dies to a 2 mana removal spell.
Sure, yeah. There's Heartless Act in the set, so your Mythic can die to a 2 mana removal spell. And actually, that's a good point. That your deck is protected from Heartless Act.
That is true. It will be heartbreaking for people to have their Heartless Act and everything has counters. And the first time you cast a Heartless Act on something with counters, you will learn heartbreak. I think that that's one of the redeeming qualities, I think, of this deck, is that actually Heartless Act and Epic Downfall are pretty strong removal spells, and the common ones are also pretty strong. So if black is open, you might, and you get some green beaters, you might actually build a deck around just that. I remove your things, and I put a big thing, and then I expect you to react to it somehow. And if you don't, then you're dead because I have a 7/7 moose, lion, whatever.
But just also like removal in general does not like removal versus this deck is not that effective because you can just get the land back, right? Which is still like value. I guess that's not helping your board. But then a lot of these creatures die into more value. You have the Pox bearers, which I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more when we get to Orzhov. But like the Golgari hybrid card also dies into an Earthbend.
That's true. Okay, let's go to back to Sam, and then let's talk about the black-red Fire Nation aggro. Quotation marks is what she wants us to do. The hybrid is Vindictive Wardens 2 and a hybrid Rakdos 2/3 menace Firebending 1, and then 3 mana. This creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So ping. And then the uncommon legend is the Zhao Ruthless Admiral at 2 Rakdos for a 3/4 with Firebending 2. Whenever you sacrifice another permanent, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. And the signpost is, I think that's huge for Rakdos in terms of size. 5 mana, 5/4 with raid. This creature enters with a +1/+1 counter in it if you attacked this turn. And when this creature attacks, create a 2/2 red soldier creature token with Firebending. That's absolutely massive. When you cast it post-attack, it's a 6/5, which gives it a decent chance of surviving until the next attack when it spots you another 2/2, even if they manage to double block it out of the contention. And you're firebending most of the time, so attacking is also scary because you can have like instant speed responses, tricks, or whatever that you cast for nothing. And then the two enablers that I selected is Fire Sages that we talked about, and Fire Nation Cadets, which is a 1 mana 1/2. It has Firebending 2, which is massive to getting 2 mana for it, but it only happens when you have a lesson in your graveyard. So you need to activate the Firebending on that particular card, but it's a 1-drop, so you might do it at some stage. And yeah, I think that a couple of the enablers I selected is the Fire Nation attacks that makes 2/2/2s with Firebending 1 for 5 mana at instant speed. And the instant speed here is the enabler, is a payoff because obviously you're going to get your Firebending mana in combat, and then you can only cast instants. How to start a riot is, I think, interesting. It's a 3 mana Trumpet Blast, but it also can give target creature menace until end of turn. So you can attack with your Firebender, give it menace, pump your team, and then see what opponent does. Or you can just let the combat happen, they do their blocks, and then you cut the Trumpet Blast, and then you see what happens. And Azula, they also mentioned 4 mana 4/3. When it attacks, you lose 1 life and you make a clue, and it has Firebending 2, which gives you the mana to sacrifice that clue. Hopefully more of those cards in your deck than in the blue-white.
I think so.
Did you? I did notice that Vindictive Wardens, you put 2 copies of that card. So do you like it?
Yes. There are only, I believe, 2 common spells with Firebending. Let me verify that.
You talk, I'll find. Don't worry.
I think there's 3. There's the 5-drop, which I actually like too. So I think this is a pretty low to the ground aggressive deck that really wants to lean on combat tricks. So you have Fire Nation Cadets in the 1-drop slot. I honestly could have done 2 of those, but I felt like this specific build when I was building it out didn't have enough lessons. But like, if you end up being so lucky to get 3 Firebending lessons, or maybe you're running extra copies of Azula Always Lies, I think that's a really, really strong 1-drop. Like Firebending 2 is a lot of mana. Like two extra mana is a lot of mana on your 1-drop.
We didn't talk about blue-red, but there's also the blue-red hybrid lesson that works well with Firebending that can be played in that deck.
Yeah, it's instant speed, tormenting voice with lesson. I think that's really strong. So I think if you are leaning into this like combat trick style of black-red, like trying to cast Fire Nation attacks in the 5-drop slot, which I think is a very strong spell. Or you also have the I can't read that, Swamp something trap, the 3 mana aura with flash that gives -5, -3.
Swamp Snare Trap. That's
If you can really lean into being able to spend your mana, I think Firebending is very strong. Vindictive Warden, which is the black-red hybrids, 3 mana, 2/3 menace, Firebending 1. Also has activated ability 3. This creature deals 1 damage to each opponent, which actually adds up very, very quickly, especially if you have extra mana that you need a spot to spend it. So I think this is a common that fits really well into this type of deck. I think it looks pretty strong, pretty supported. Lightning Strike is another thing that's really good to cast mid-combat. Cunning Maneuver, which is 2 mana, instant, target creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn, create a clue token. I think there's a good mixture of forcing awkward blocks out of your opponent and being able to blow them out in combat with Firebending mana, and just a lot of like face damage with Lightning Strike, Cunning Maneuver, Vindictive Warden triggers. I think that the deck looks pretty good, and I think black-red is the best home for most of the firebending cards. I do think you can build a pretty good blue-red aggro deck that leans into firebending. I think you could probably build a pretty good white-red aggro deck that's base red, leans into firebending, though I do think white-red is going to be more often base white than base red.
Why do you think Callous Inspector is there? Just because it works well with tricks, or?
Yeah, works really well with tricks, especially Cunning Maneuver. Like, it's not going to let the Callous Inspector survive, but it will let it trade for 2 creatures from your opponent, and then you have 2 clues to spend your Firebending mana on. I think Callous Inspector just looks like a decently supported card, like a decent card in these types of low-to-the-ground decks, and I don't really see a home for Callous Inspector in, like, blue-black or green-black, so I think that this is a card I wanted to showcase for this deck, and I think it's going to be pretty good for white-black as well.
Now, there are some like red-black sacrifice cards, and I noticed you didn't include them in this deck. There's the hybrid uncommon, right?
The hybrid uncommon, which is
Admiral Zhao.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
3/4, and when you sacrifice, you pump the team.
Sure. Yeah, you could build that. I think most of the sack outlets are in black. So this is me leaning into a more base red version of this, but there is an active treason at uncommon. So you
Pretty
could
strong. I mean, because you can cast it just for as a mini falter. That makes a clue.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a clue. I think that card's very strong. I could have built this a different, like there's a different skeleton out there that's steel and sack, or just like black red sack that would lean more into Callous Inspector. I think that looks pretty good too.
Cool. Another card that you put in, 2 actually cards that you put in this deck that I was interested about: Combustion Man and the Cave of Two Lovers. Maybe let's start with Combustion Man, and let me type it in the chat so I can put it on the thing.
Yeah, I'll read it out loud too. It's a 5 mana 4/6. It costs 3 red. Uncommon. Whenever Combustion Man attacks, destroy target permanent unless its controller has Combustion Man, deal damage to them equal to his power. I think that this card is just good. This basically, like, you just target their best creature and they just have to pay 4 life, and then if you have been doing your job as the aggro deck and reducing their life total, like if this comes down when they're at, say, 8 life, this just blows up. It just vindicates stuff every single turn it can attack. So I think this is a very, very good curve topper for red decks. Cave of Two Lovers. This is an uncommon 3 in a red saga. Chapter 1, make 2 ally tokens. They're 1/1s. Chapter 2, you get a mountain or a cave from your library to your hand. And Chapter 3 is Earthbend 3. I just think this card is very strong. I expect it to be like in the B range, like just a very generically strong, good red uncommon, because it's 4 mana for a 3/3 and 2 1/1s plus a land, which is just very good rate. And we know that, like, yes, sagas take a little bit to get all the value, but in general, it's very much worth it. And I think also with this card, worth noting that Earthbend 3 on a saga, you're going to be able to attack with that Earthbend 3 land very reliably the turn that triggers.
Okay, cool. Because I was a bit not sure whether, like, it's 4 mana for 5/5 of stats, but it just spread so widely that I was not sure if it will be working. Cool. Let's move to the next one, and that's blue-black draw 2. And believe it or not, it's about drawing 2 cards in a turn. The hybrid common. Wait, my computer starts getting crazy. The hybrid common is 2 and a Dimir for 1/2 flying creature. When it enters, create a clue token, and it gets +2/+0 as long as you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn. Which actually doesn't look embarrassing, to be fair. It's a 2 mana more expensive Draven Inspector, but it has flying, and I think that
I mean,
not every turn, but a good amount of turns, it's going to attack as a 3/2 flyer for 3 mana, which is pretty good stat line.
it's kind of like a three-burning specter and a what's the Delver of Secrets put together.
Wow, you heard it first.
It's busted. No, it's 3 mana, so it's not that good. If it were 2 mana, I think it would be like a messed up card.
Okay, and then we have the big hybrid. That's Hama the Bloodbender. And that one is... I need the bigger version of it because the text on it is tiny small. When Hama enters, target opponent mills 3 cards, exiles up to 1 non-creature, non-land card from that player's graveyard. For as long as you control Hama, you may cast the exiled card during your turn by Waterbending X rather than paying its mana cost, where X is its mana value. So, first of all, you mill the opponent for 3, but you probably already want to have a target for Hama as you cast it, and then the mill 3 maybe gets you a better target, because there is a good chance of missing if there is nothing. And sometimes you cast a Desperation Hama and hope to hit something out of it. But if you have a target for it, 5 mana for a 3/3 that gets you a spell, as long as you control Hama, but hopefully you'll pick the target that you can Waterbend on the same turn that you cast Hama. That seems like a decent thing, but it also screams I'm playing a control deck a lot, and I don't know if the control decks are going to be good enough in this particular set. And then we have the Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper as a signpost. It's 1 blue-black for a 2/4 lifelink. And this is like an amazing stat line. I mean, 3 mana, 2/4 lifelink, that's a lot of goodness there. And whenever you draw your second card, you make a 1/1 spirit that it cannot block or be blocked by non-spirit creatures. And there are few spirits in the set, mainly in blue and black. So for sake of most decks, I think that those 1/1s will be just unblockable, but also cannot block. And if you need blocking, you have a 2/4 lifelinker. That looks pretty powerful as a signpost uncommon in terms of like how much mana you pay and what you get. As enablers, I selected a couple of cards that can draw you the second card quite freely on your turn. Grand, blue for a 1/2. When it becomes tapped, you draw a card and discard a card. And also, if you have 3 or more lessons cards in your graveyard, non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And Gazer Leaper, that's a 5 mana 4/3 flyer with Waterbend 4 that lets you draw a card and then discard a card, the card that we mentioned before, as a sort of begrudgingly playable top end. And that dies to a 2 mana removal spell quite reliably. I put some payoffs. There's not that many. There's Otter Penguin. That's a 2/1. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gets +1/+2 and can't be blocked this turn. There's Knowledge Seeker, which is a 2 mana 2/1 vigilance. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and when it dies, you make a clue. So it's both like a payoff, because if you draw more than 1 card, it grows every turn. And then if it dies, you get a clue, which you can use to draw a second card in a turn. But I do think that like most of those synergies are likely loose, and it's not like highly supported archetype. It probably is like either decent secondary chassis for a tempo deck, or, judging by the Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper, something in the control area where you play some removal spells, maybe some card draw, and Foggy Swamp Keeper keeps the fort up because of the lifelink, and you survive long enough to cast enough spells that the 1/1 spirits you produced can... I think that those 1/1 spirits are sort of like decayed zombies in a way. Like you can't block with them, but if you generate enough of them, they can actually take over the game quite reliably. And these ones don't die on attacks; they just continue ping for 1 each of them every turn, and maybe our sacrifice fodder at some stage.
It's kind of like the emblem from that 6-mana Chandra that pings the opponent on their upkeep.
Yeah. Sort of, yeah. It's a Chandra emblem on a 3-mana 2/4 lifelink creature, which is, again, I think that this is like a very, very strong signpost for this set. Like, if not one of the strongest one. I don't think that the color combination, on the other hand, is the strongest. So maybe it's the case of it's good when you draw your signpost, or when you manage to draft a couple of copies of those. So what did you think about the blue-black deck, Sam? Because I assume I'm talking about your version.
Yeah, I think that it looks a lot like my build of blue-white. So
maybe it's because it's blue-centric.
Yes, you will notice 2 copies of Forecasting Fortune Teller in the 2-drop slot. You will notice Katara Bending Prodigy in the 3-drop slot. Reppin' Giant Koi, apparently. And then kind of filled it out with the black cards that I think I'll be mostly interested in. I, for some reason, omitted Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper. I think the card looks great. I think it would go very well here. You have just black removal spells, Epic Downfall, Heartless Act, 2 copies of Sold Out, which is the 4-mana exile with flavor text. Then 2 copies of It'll Quench Ya in the 2-drop slot, which is generally a card that tends to overperform in blue control decks that need a little bit more like cheap interaction. I think that's nothing special here. Corrupt Court Official, the Burglar Rats, in the 2-drop slot as well. That's generally a card that's pretty good in slower black decks. And I think looks okay here, even though it doesn't really have a ton of synergy in this deck. The off-color hybrid card I've included here is, it's a little too small to read it. It's Professor
J, Anthropologist.
Yeah, so that is a 2-mana 0/3. It's Is It Hybrid? Is It Hybrid? So you can cast it in this deck for blue exactly. It has tap, discard a card, draw a card, and 1 tap, sack it to return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. Activate only during your turn. There was a card called Vohar, I think, from Dominaria United. That was a very similar card that played really well in blue-black in that set. I think this card looks very similar. I, for some reason, omitted Foggy Swamp Spirit Keepers here, but you can make a 1/1 every single turn with Professor Zay here. So I think this fits really nicely into what blue-black wants to be doing in this set, both synergistically and just like as a pretty good defensive card. And I think I'd be pretty happy to play it if I had, say, 10 blue sources, which is what you'll get if you build 9 islands, 7 swamp, and a dual land, which I think seems not unreasonable at all.
That Koi will have to do a lot of attacking. But, just to break up for a second, I would like to welcome Trezio, who does join us. He had a bit of a family duties. Being a reasonable adult, decided to focus on the family and join the Magic the Gathering children card game stream a bit later, but better late than never. So welcome. Trezio, who I've met in person quite recently. I was actually sporting your t-shirt yesterday, but it got dirty when I was doing something, so I cannot have it on stream because it's in the laundry.
That's quickly becoming your work t-shirt, I see. I'm not sure entirely what to think about that.
I was wearing it on Sunday, and I was not expecting any work, but my wife had other ideas, and then I had to do some work, and that was sad. No one was the winner. I mean, my wife, I guess, was the winner.
Because she received labor.
Yeah, exactly. Because she received slave labor.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I was not paid for that, I guess. So Trezio prepared some of the archetypes. We can move to them later. I put them at the end of the slideshow for the reason that we didn't know when you can join. But now you can finish off the blue-black Sam.
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Oh, you're done. Yeah. You are done, but I'm not. I have to ask questions. Cards I was interested. It'll quench you. Why so many copies of it?
So this is maybe not the best example because I have a very large 2-drop slot in my skeletons just because I think the 2-drops are good. But oftentimes when you're building a blue control deck, you have a lot of like interaction up the curve, like the 2 copies of Sold Out, and you'll have like bigger payoffs, and you're just kind of like missing something to do for 2 mana. And Quench is always there for you if you need something to do for 2 mana, because if you are on the play and you hold up 2 mana, you can counter their 2-drop, and that is just good enough. And also in Magic in 2025, nobody runs out with stuff to do with their mana, and Quench can still nab someone's double spell on turn 6 or 7. So I think Quench is generally underrated. There's literally no upside on this Quench except that it's a lesson, which actually is something. But I think that the upside on Quenches is generally just fake anyway. Like it doesn't matter. Like they could just literally print the card Quench and it wouldn't make a difference at all.
You have a couple of looting outlets as well.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. You can loot Quench away when it's bad sometimes. So I'm a big Quench fan situationally when you need something like that. Also worth noting, 2 copies of Forecasting Fortune Teller. You can hold up your Clue mana and also hold up a Quench. It's a pretty good way to spend your mana.
Hide your Quench as well.
Exactly.
Another last question, maybe Master Paku. I saw that you put him in also white blue shell. What does appeal to you? Just the 1/3 prowess is good enough, or are you planning to mill things?
I think 1/3 prowess is good enough. If the game goes long enough, you can mill your opponent. There are 6 lessons in this deck, which is a decent amount. But I think that like 1/3 prowess is a pretty good stat line for a 2-drop, especially in blue. And especially if you think like what I think the blue decks are going to want to do is hold up mana on your opponent's turn. Master Paku's like impossible to attack through in the early turns, like on turn 4 and beyond, when you can hold up Sold Out or Quench, or like if your opponent goes for a combat trick, you can turn it into a 2/4 and nothing's getting through 2/4.
Imagine just Azula Always Lies and put a counter on your Master Paku.
Yeah. There you go.
And it's a lesson. Okay. We will move to Zach's now because we have to speed up a bit. Okay.
Sure. We can go quickly. So speaking of lessons,
blue, green, ramp and lessons. The hybrids being Platypus Bear, which is shockingly a blue common creature that is 2 power and 3 toughness thanks to its green hybrid component. I'm not going to go into the discussion of what hybrid color is. I'll leave it to commander people. It does have defender, and when it enters, you mill 2 cards. But as long as you have a lesson card in your graveyard, this creature can attack as though it didn't have a defender. Which, in my head, given the density of lessons, means it's going to be just a 2 mana 2/3 a lot of the time, which is something that is shocking for blue having access to. Gurupathic is the legendary uncommon sign hybrid, and when it enters, you look at the top 5 cards of your library, and then you can reveal lesson, saga, or shrine from them. And put it in your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your library. And whenever you cast a lesson, saga, or a shrine, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. So it seems that Simic is the intended place where shrines should be put, at least according to the design team. And then you have Hermetic Herbalist. That's green-blue for a 2/3. Tap to add 1 mana of any color, or tap to add 2 mana of any combination of colors and spend it only to cast lesson spells. And there's like a bunch of ramp. There's Shared Roots that is basically rampant growth lesson. Cycle of Renewal that is basically a Harrow lesson. And a bunch of things that can either draw you many cards or cards or big creatures for much mana. And I think you can put those in your green-blue ramp and lessons deck. But of course, our guests or our skeleton crew members might have different ideas about the deck. So what did you put for us, Zach?
So for this, I did okay. So I think the problem with Simic is that like you zeroed in on Garu Paruk. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but he's telling you to do a lot of things. He says like you can look for a lesson, you can look for a saga, you can look for a shrine, right? Sagas, I think you're just sort of is a gimme here, right? You're not really building a saga deck, right? There's just not a density of them. But I think your choices are if you have, really most of the time, I think you're going to be trying to do lesson related stuff, right? If you have a saga deck, Garu Park is going to like slot into that, right? And so here you're trying to ramp up to some pretty powerful big boom booms. You have these land cyclers, and then you have some cards that are really strong when you have a density of lessons in your graveyard, and like which is Boomy, King of the Three Trials, which I don't know the text on this guy, but he really cares about lessons and pays you off if you have a lot of them. These kind of like splish splashy go big decks tend to yeah, exactly. There's a few that are uncommon, but like you're probably not gonna like the ones that rare are all at mythic rare, right? Like you're only gonna get a few of the uncommons if you get them. It's just a nice to have thing. I think in practice, if you're playing Simic, usually you're splashing, and usually you want to be splashing things of higher rarity. But in the skeleton decks, I really try to focus on the lower rarity cards. So I played this, built this out any rares, and the only thing we're really splashing here is like red base removal. I think it also could be interesting to splash because things like Uncle Iroh is castable with just green mana. We have the curve from Uncle Iroh into Earthbending lesson and Waterbending lesson, which is quite nice. And you have these platypus bears and ostrich horse that have self mill, which can really turn on accumulate wisdom. Right, accumulate wisdom is this very powerful spell, which is a 2-mana draw 3 if you have 3 lessons in your graveyard, and I think it counts itself. I'm not 100% sure.
No, it won't count itself because it would have to resolve first, and it will be on the stack when you count for it. But anyway, a couple of things. One thing, thanks to Jyrok for the raid. Nice to have a world champion pop in with this with his French francophone brigade, but hopefully you're going to stay a bit longer, despite us being English speaking here. So thank you very much, John Manuel. And yeah, you're staying. Okay, yeah. Well, the leader has spoken. Hey, how are you doing? Are you still gloating about beating me in Liverpool?
Oh, okay.
Some people. No, I mean, I have to say that meeting Jean Emmanuel in person was absolutely great. He's a super lovely person. As you would expect from his streams, honestly, there was a little surprise, but it was better than I expected, which did shock me because I didn't think that it's possible. Okay, and the second thing, I can start asking you questions. Like, oh yeah, the second thing is that I do know from some chats with the people in the design that Simic very often is designed as not to be Simic, but as to be multicolor archetype. By definition, you're supposed to be splashing in Simic, and I think that this might be one of the sets where that's the case. I'm not sure about the particularities of this one.
Now, I don't know about red being the default splash color. There is a Teamer Mythic, I think, legend that really cares about lessons. I think it's another Uncle Iroh, which would be a very powerful build around for this kind of strategy. So maybe you want to do that.
Zero respect for the lore. This is Uncle Iroh, the Grand Lotus, the head of the resistance, the secret resistance against the might and wrath of the Fire Empire.
The only thing I can say about the flavor of this set is that I've read a lot of Spider-Man comics, and that set was bad. And I've seen no Avatar and played no Final Fantasy games. So based on previous track record, this set should be a banger.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that a lot of the splashing will depend on what bombs you open that are off color, and we are focusing on commons and uncommons in our skeletons. And I see that you didn't even bother putting any rares.
Yeah.
And I think that it's specific for the set that I looked through the rare list and there was nothing that was like really springing out as like, oh, that thing is absolutely busted in half in limited. I can see maybe some cards that are looking busted in half constructed, but for limited, they all look powerful, but not like wow powerful. You don't have your busted rares.
I will say there's some build arounds though, which would be kind of interested from a limited perspective.
Yeah, that would be definitely interested. So I think that a lot of the splashing will be determined by what very, very good rare, but maybe not a busted bomb you're going to open and get past or something.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that Platypus Bear is a very interesting addition to that deck because 2/3 that will very often be attacking is a neat thing to have for those kind of decks. Like blue often doesn't have any kind of defensive creature. Green better, but this thing is at common. It gives a new level of tools.
Are you sure? I feel like we've had like moat piranhas and some variant, and
yeah, but those things never can attack. They're like horrendous about it. This one is absolutely trivial to activate as a normal creature. And
there was that one in Duskmorn attacked fairly frequently.
Fairly frequently is not like being basically a creature without defender. And
okay.
this
one does turn on and can attack without conditions after a certain point.
Yeah, and these usually require to trigger them every turn, and this one just like stays a creature. Hey, not much graveyard. There's some, but not much. Okay, what other cards did we highlight in the slides? Waterbending lesson, Earthbending lesson, quite obvious. I think that you sold the sagas a bit short. Yes, they're uncommon, but when you think about it, it's just like adding one extra copy of a lesson for your. I will find my lessons with.
I mean, it's nice to be able to hit them. That's true, and I think I saw an archetype earlier, in which Sam, you had Leaves from the Vine in a deck with like, I mean, this is like lessons.deck, right? Like, I wonder how many lessons you want to make a card like Leaves from the Vine worth it, right? Because I think if you're not drawing a card on chapter 3, it's pretty sad. So how many lessons do you think you need in a deck in order to make it worth it?
I think Leaves from the Vine is just good. I think you want to be able to draw a card most of the time, but you are sad when it doesn't trigger. But I think the card is still fine even if you don't. But I think I would want, in this deck specifically, I could see going as far down as 6, maybe 5, because like Platypus Boar mills you, Ostrich Horse mills you. You're going to flip a lot of your deck into the graveyard. Leaves from the Vine mills you as well. And also, like, the lessons are not like creatures that need to like trade off in combat to go to the graveyard. Like, once you cast them, they're immediately going to go there. So I don't really think you need that many, but I do think that I did a practice draft today where I was blue-green lessons, and it was not too hard to get like 10 in my deck. Like, I went a little bit out of my way. So I do think that the lesson stuff looks really supported.
Yeah, especially when like Earthbending lesson is a creature, so you can get this non-creature spell and still have things that kill in the game. Also,
and another triggers off a creature in your graveyard. I actually missed that. You don't even need a lesson. You can just have a creature, which is
okay. I completely misread that too.
I misread that too.
Yeah, which we're now at the majority of your deck by quite a margin, right?
Yeah. And also, you should always be sad when you cast Leaves from the Vine, as I said, because of the lore ramifications of that card. It's a very sad card, and you should be sad when you cast it because it's all about senselessness of war and mourning of a father who buried his son. That's why a creature is in the graveyard, and that's why also a lesson triggers it, because it's a lesson. It's a great, I mean, this is a very, very well crafted saga in terms of like a top down. Let's move to something else. What do we have now?
Okay. I also did the this combat lessons, the Is It Lessons deck.
So I will. Well, it obviously is about lessons and spells. I think it calls it combat lessons, but it's really spell slinging kind of thing. Look at the Signpost uncommon, which is Dragonfly Swarm, 3 mana for an X3 flying word 1. Hounds of Hell have started. Power is equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard. When this creature dies, if there is a lesson card in your graveyard, you draw a card. So you definitely want to make sure that there's a lesson in your graveyard at some stage, so that the Dragonfly Swarm gets killed, you basically replace it. And of course, spells are going to be enablers for that. Cheap removal, card draw. That's what spell slinger decks are specializing for. Cards that I selected as the payoffs. Serpent of the Past, I think, is particularly interesting. It's like this set's version of Tolarian Terror. It's a 7 mana 6/5, but if you have 3 or more lessons in your graveyard, you can cast it as it had flash, and it costs 1 less for each spell in your graveyard. So technically, if you have enough lessons in your graveyard, enough spells, you can cast it as a 2 mana 6/5 flash creature. Doesn't have word, but that's pretty good still. And there's a couple of other things. Combustion Technique is a burn spell that grows the more lessons you have in your graveyard. And Zhong, the Deserter, is a 3 mana 2/3 with Firebending, and Exhaust 3. You put a counter on it, and next time you cast a lesson this turn, you copy it, which can be quite good. And I think that a couple of things that are important for this deck: Iguana Parrot, that's the 2/2 flying Vigilance Prowess. Porcupine is a Spellgorger weird, basically. And Accumulate Wisdom is the thing that can draw you 3 cards when you have 3 lessons in your graveyard for 2 mana, which is like an insane rate. Literally Ancestral Recall. Right, tell me about your version of it.
So yeah, again, this is another like lessons deck, more or less. In fact, I saw cribbed from Sam here, and I put 2 copies of Abandoned Attachments in this deck. That is the instant speed Tormenting Voice. And I think that's really nice to trigger your various, prowess guys. Some of the clunkier ones, you have like the Boropine, the Iguana Parrot, but those are gonna, it's going to get you those triggers. It's going to grow those creatures. It's going to discount your Serpent, and it's going to get you closer to that payoff of having 3 lessons into your graveyard. I think for this deck, it's going to be a bit of a challenge on figuring out the right balance of creatures and spells, because you're going to have a lot of pressure to get the density of lessons in your deck in order to make this all work. And I think you can have draws in which you have the wrong combination of things, and maybe Abandoned Attachments will help you fix that out. But if you have the right density, things like Combustion Technique can be really potent, right? Really efficient removal. One thing I was wondering is that I put Uncle Iroh in this deck, although only a few of the lessons are actually expensive, right? So like, Waterbending lesson, Lost Days, Soka's Haiku, like you're getting a discount on that. But for some of your other lessons, they're like 2 mana to begin with, right? So maybe it's not quite helping you get to the place where you're being able to like fit more into your mana curve,
Okay, I'm a bit surprised you didn't put any Firebending into the deck.
Yeah, I did think about that. I thought that like some of the stuff you're going to want to do on your opponent's turn, Fire Nation attacks is an instant that you're probably going to want to play on your opponent's turn. Serpent of the Past is something that you want to play on your opponent's turn. And I think like you have some instants. I mean, you have Abandoned Attachments, which is an instant, and maybe that's just a good enough reason to have Firebenders. But yeah, I think it's just like this pressure between you want to have spells, and I want the creatures that I play to be payoffs that do damage, right? Although there are Firebenders that do that have like mana sinks. So I think that is like something that we're gonna have to figure out, and I don't know if I'm in the right here.
Yeah, this is going to be definitely like tricky to, a bit maybe finicky to fine tune that deck, because it can go many directions, and I'm still not sure which one is the right one. But I'm just highlighting that Firebending might be one of the things that could work with that, because 3 mana is always good.
Also, you probably want more 2-drops looking at this curve, but
all right, Sam,
we
is that
can't all be
your,
Sam exactly? So.
is that your white red go white aggro?
I think it is.
So I'm
Pretty
going to
sure.
skip, because
No, this is
white
not
green.
mine. Wait.
Okay, who's
No, this is mine. Yeah, this is mine.
Okay, this is yours. It has Sokka. It is yours. I think that important things to put in there. Sun Warriors looks quite powerful as well. It's 4 mana 3/5 with Firebending X, where X is the number of creatures you control, and then 5 mana to make a 1/1 white ally creature token. So that's definitely an interesting one. There's a bunch of both red and white things that put multiple bodies on the board, like Kyoshi Warriors, like Fire Nation Attacks, like Treetop Freedom Fighters. There's also Water Tribe Captain, which is a 3 mana 3/3, and for 5 mana it pumps the team by 1, which is particularly good with Firebending, I guess, because you can use that mana to pump your team. There's Trumpet Blast and How to Start Riot as well. And yeah, give it away. What do you think about this deck?
Yeah, like I said before, I think you could build this base white or base red. Like I think the base red firebending stuff, there's like a lot of self-contained payoffs in red. But I built this I built this with white go wide. So you have a whole bunch of 2-drops as usual. They're all white. So you have stuff like Invasion Reinforcements, which is 2 mana, make 2 1/1s. You have Zhong's Deserters, which is 2 mana, 1/2, put a counter on something. You have Pretending Poxbearers, which is the black-white hybrid, which is just 1 in black-white hybrid, 2/1. When it dies, make a 1/1, which is a more flexible version of Beskir Shieldmate from Kaldheim, which was like a pretty good common in that set. That set's 4 years old now, 4.5 years old now. But I do think that 2/1 that dies into a 1/1 is just a pretty good card in a white aggressive deck.
The question was it good because of going white, or was it good because of the equipment theme that allowed you to go tall with the second body?
And the answer is both. The answer is yes.
I see that you put Sokka and Suki, which is great because they are an item-ish on and off in the show. So you stay true to the lore. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a very lore-focused build of white red. And also, like when you build, like I'm envisioning, you get 1 dual land, you have 9 or 10 plains, and then fill the rest out with mountains. You get very easy access to Sokka and Suki, which are both, I think, very, very strong uncommons that are just like, you can just play them as a mono white card. I think Jet Freedom Fighter is a really good payoff in the 5-drop slot. I actually kind of high on Wandering Musicians, which is the red-white uncommon, the hybrid, or the red-white hybrid common. This is a 4 mana 2/5. Whenever this creature attacks, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Free team pump is pretty strong. This is kind of like Glimmerheart, Lionheart Glimmer from Duskmourn.
Strictly better crab.
Yes, strictly better Wishcoin Crab. And then Lionheart Glimmer costs 1 extra mana in Duskmourn, but had Ward 2 and triggered off any attack. So that you get the buff on the same turn. Obviously, this is common, so it's going to be worse. But I do think, like, if you're making a bunch of bodies, also with Kyoshi Warriors, which is 4 mana, 3/3 +1/1, I think it's just like fine to play this as sort of top end when you're going wide. It like 2/5 is a pretty hard to remove body for something like this. So I think white red looks really good. You get to play like Airbending Lesson, I think looks really good as a proactive spell. Glider Staff is actually an uncommon.
That's the card that I wanted to ask you about.
I think this card
pretty
is
good. Yeah.
I think this card looks very, very good. Yeah. So like this is 3 mana equipment at uncommon in white. When it enters, you airbend. Target non-land permanent, maybe creature, and then it's a equipment for equip 2. Equip creature gets +1/+1 in flying. The equipment, we don't have very many equipment in Magic's history that gives the full +1/+1 and flying. And I think that is very strong for 2 mana. And I think that the extra cost you're paying for a 3 mana equipment up front is definitely worth it when you airbend. Like, in terms of enabling an attack for a combat, airbend just is exile target creature. Like, it fully removes the thing from combat. So I think that you can force an attack with that. Can you stop? You're interrupting this. You can force your creatures through, and then you get the inevitability later with the flying equipment. So I think it looks very, very strong.
Yeah. Another card I wanted to ask you about, Earth Kingdom Jailer. 3 mana, 3/3, and it exiles thing with the mana value 3 or greater when it enters until it leaves the battlefield. It's a bit weird because on the play, you cannot cast it on curve unless you want to cast a vanilla 3/3. If Center Courser is your jam, then be my guest. Do you think of it as a sort of like a 5-drop double spell thing, or?
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm a lot lower on this card than most people. It is true that it is 3/3 worth of stats and removes something from the battlefield, but it reminds me of the bad Plane Cycler from March of the Machine, which was a 6 mana 3/4 Fiend Hunter. And the problem with these types of cards is you just don't want to put them in combat. A 3/3 body is pretty real, so there's definitely a lot of upside here, but I think that, like, I just am not thrilled with the card. I mean, I guess you can play it on curve on 3 and it's just a 3/3 and then it's fine. So there's something here. I think it's a fine card to play. I think it's gonna be a little overrated though. But I think it's still worth playing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the next one. Do we still have something? Well, let's move to the let's give Tresio some of the sweet screen time.
I do have to leave right now. It's getting late for me. I have something I gotta go to.
Sacrifice is yours or whose?
I think that was my last one.
You're telling me that it's quite late. It's 1 a.m. here.
I meant I have something that I have to go to.
People and their
lives.
Thank you very
engagements.
So since you're going, before you
go,
do you want to plug something?
Sure, I'll plug my podcast. It's called Rough Drafts.
Yeah, it's very good.
You can find it wherever you find podcasts. I will have my hot topics episode for Avatar coming out on Thursday. And I'm quite excited to dig into a real limited format after Spider-Man.
After Vintage Cube.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Hey, thanks for being here, man. Cheers.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. See you guys.
Bye, Sam.
All right. So let's move to the white-green allies. Last but not least, I guess. The hybrid, we talked about Suki Kyoshi Warrior, the legend. 2 hybrid Selesnya for an X4. It has power equal to the number of creatures you control, so at least 1/4. Whenever Suki attacks, create a 1/1 ally creature token that is tapped and attacking. That's basically a budget version of Adeline. And Adeline is a Vintage Cube All-Star, any Cube All-Star. It was an All-Star of its own format. Here we have that in a worse version for 1 more mana at uncommon. I'm pretty sure that it's still going to be a very oppressive card. Not as oppressive as Adeline, though, but at least worth noticing that it exists at such a power level. So the cards I wanted to focus on when I was presenting the archetype, I think Kyoshi Warriors looks pretty good as a 4 mana 3/3 that brings a 1/1 friend, both of them being allies. Gather the White Lotus, I think, is an interesting one if you're building a white tinted version of white-green, because that's the 5 mana spell that makes a 1/1 white ally creature for each planes you control and you scry 2. It's sort of like weirdly similar to Imperial Oath in one way or another. What else? There are a couple of cards that are between bad payoffs and quite good payoffs. Bet Payoff Avatar Enthusiasts, 3 mana for 2/2 when an ally enters. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Now, obviously, problem with this kind of creature is that you draw it late. It's just a 3 mana 2/2 that will unlikely grow bigger than that. But then we have Haru Hidden Talent. That's a 2 mana 1/1. Whenever another ally you control enters, Earthbend 1. That's, I think, more interesting because it's cheaper and at least the Earthbending makes a wider board and also is a hasty attacker. So that's an interesting option in there. How did you build your deck, Trezio? And also maybe introduce yourself because you didn't have a proper formal introduction because you were not there when we started.
Sure. I'm Tressio. I'm a limited only player. I stream at twitch.tv/Tressio, especially early in a format, and especially I like to do a lot of sealed early. So if in a couple of days when we have early access, I will stream almost exclusively sealed in order to help people get ready for pre-release. Yes, and I occasionally travel to foreign countries and bother other podcast hosts. So
absolutely welcome to bother me again.
So first of all, you were talking about flavor for Uncle Eero earlier. When you were going through the early slides, did you talk about the flavor of the number of cards available for bending? I found it fascinating that there were like 25 to 28 cards available for fire, earth, and water bending, but there were only about half as much for airbending.
We talked about,
of course, there's the Last Airbender, right? There just aren't any left.
Yeah, exactly. We mentioned it, yeah.
That's good. That's good. So you will notice that I built this very, 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 very white. And it does not have to be built this way, obviously. If you look at the cards that were presented in the last slide that touched green, those are all certainly valid cards to have in here. But what I wanted to experiment with is how close this archetype could get, especially with the idea of allies go wide, to just being white. And one of the reasons that I did that was because of cards like Gather the White Lotus, which I put 2 copies of in here, because if you have just a later turn where you're making like 11 allies in a longer game, that's going to be great. And obviously the whiter the deck is, the more planes you have. And the closer you are to mono white, the more you can feel good about cutting a land, which you notice that I've done here. The only reason that I have green in the deck is for the White Lotus reinforcements. And that's just as an example of having a green card here. I think you could have, just 2 or 3 green cards and feel pretty good about yourself. I actually want a couple of copies of the white-green common land in here, mainly to have some late game card draw, because that's going to be pretty lacking in this deck. But the idea of this deck is building it around like a first pick of United Front. I like to think about how am I going to get into this deck, and if I have United Front as a first pick, I'm going to want to try to get as white as possible. And then, be able to have an explosive turn later where I create, several 1/1s, and then I have a bunch of 2/2s that can attack in, and I just have a wider board than everybody else. So pictured here are the 2 rares that I built the deck around. Suki is giving not just allies, but all of my creatures like a permanent anthem. And then the idea of, 1/1s going away and a 1/1 being created in its wake means even if you're sending in like, 1 creature at a time with some kind of equipment or some kind of a buff on it, you're replacing that creature immediately. So, you had pictured in the last slide the 3/3 that makes a 1/1. I think I have 1 copy of that in here, but I much, much prefer having the reinforcements at 2 mana that are making 2 1/1s right away and have the ability to come in with flash. So that I want that to be cheap. I want the 2 mana white black hybrid that can replace itself. I don't want any copies of the 1/2 that will add a counter to something, because what I want is just sheer numbers of bodies. And I'm including the cards in here that are also basing themselves off of the number of creatures you control. So that's the goal, is just get wide as quickly as possible, pay it off by not so much antheming as red white is wanting to do, but can I put counters on those creatures and make that more permanent? Because when you have the anthems or you have the creatures that are pumping your team, you know, like the Lotus reinforcements, the drawback always is you get weak so fast by that creature getting removed. And so I'm trying to create some protection for that by getting wider than is necessary to make that matter, and then having things that can create counters and multiple redundant sources of pumping my team.
You also have interesting option of a team avatar, which I think is a great card in general. I think that 90% of the time it will be played for its channel cost. Well, let's call it channel for the purposes of the game, where you can discard it and it deals damage. You go to the creatures you control. But I think that in your specific build, that actually the enchantment option is not so bad, because you can go with this wide board of 7/1/1s and then attack with one of them, and it's an 8/8, and they have to start blocking it at some stage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other thing is, notice Appa at the top of the curve. I think that's a really important card to this kind of a build, because of its ability to airbend your own stuff and then rebuy it for cheap. There's a lot of really good ETBs in here that can be rebought. That's why I have things like one copy of the Air Temple, for example. I mean, it coming in one time, and then you only have one temple because someone else is taking the temples deck, but you managed to get one copy. I mean, I would absolutely play a couple of copies of the Air Temple in here in case one copy gets destroyed, but having the one copy that Appa can come in and then, you know, basically quasi bounce it and then attack again and quasi bounce it again. And then you have this big flyer that's a nice finisher at the top end.
And it's a little awkward with the temple because, like, Appa's an attack trigger, right? So
ETB, it's Appa is a Titan, enters or attack.
Okay, but Appa is still 6 mana. You airbend the temple. You probably won't be able to recast it that turn, the turn that you cast Appa. And then when Appa attacks, you can airbend the temple, but then you won't be able to cast it until after combat. And so you don't get the
you cast it pre-combat before you attack with Appa. You airbend it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just form. So isn't the rate for put a +1/+1 counter on all your team, no other bodies, no other nothing, like 2 mana? I'm a little bit skeptical about the temple just naked with no other shrines.
Well, no, but you have other things that you can airbend. I guess that's the idea, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, like, okay, so think about like the 3 mana 3/3 where you can pay 5 to pump it, to temporarily pump your team, right? If you think about the temple as being a more permanent way of pumping your team, putting counters on everything is a big deal. I mean, the permanence of that is a big deal, right? And then the temple is sitting there, right? And you're not getting other temple synergies. So the idea of being able to, you know, you play Appa on 6, for example, it enters, you airbend your temple. Of course, you always have the option. Appa is such a utility card in this deck because, you know, just airbend their big thing that's been an annoying blocker.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's right.
Give flying to Suki.
Right, exactly. And then, but imagine then you attack, or you have the option of Appa enters, you pick up the temple, you play it the next turn for 2, and now you have more counters on all your creatures. And then you attack and you do it again. Like, the repeatability of that, you can just grow your team every turn for 2, right? And that's
that won't last very long, but
Yeah.
No, right, but I mean, you have that optionality, and like you said, Superfits, that's not the only thing that you're potentially bending with Appa. There's a lot, and that's not the only thing you're bending with your own side. And you can obviously annoyingly bend things on your opponent's side, including just, you know, oh, you have 2 tokens. No, you don't anymore after 2 turns, you know? So, so that's the idea, is go explosively wide.
Is it Appa only airbending stuff that you control?
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if it,
Well, never mind everything.
I think it would be too good if it was.
Yeah, non-land permanent you control. You're right. Yeah, but even, you know, even simple things like, you know, even go small with the idea of Appa, like bouncing your own 2 mana reinforcements, right? And you just continuously, like, you're being able to replay that for 2, like just putting that back in your hand, and you're making more counters and making more tokens, making more creatures. I think it's a really good high-end card. Even, at minimum, it's a 4/4 flying body at the top end, right? And it's doing something right when it comes in. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that it's just a very good center courser that also can do some trickery.
Yeah,
and
and you
no
notice,
center courser, not center courser, Pegasus courser, is it? Yeah, Pegasus courser.
yeah, and then you have again, the multiple redundant ways of pumping your team. So like there's 2 water tribe captains in here. It's fine. It's a 3-mana 3/3, but then the threat of activation that's sitting there. And if the game goes particularly long, I think it's very important that it's not, tap to pump your team. I mean, how often are you going to have 10 mana? But then again, that also allows you to explore things like, oh, I'm putting a little bit of green in there and I've got a little bit of, ramp going on at the same time. Anything that has Earthbending is great to include in this deck. If you can't go completely white, because then that's just another way of generating additional creatures and going wider. So
cool. We have still one last archetype to finish, and that was I'm pretty sure that was Sam's.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go through that. White Black Sacrifice. I do have a lot of hopes for that archetype. I think that main package here as enablers is the Corrupt Court Official, which is a reprint, so just the Ravenous Rats version in the human form. And Callous Inspector, the black mana for a 1/1 menace creature that when it dies, you lose 1 life and create a clue. Plus Pretending Pox Bearers, another good sacrifice fodder, the 2 mana 2/1, and it dies into a 1/1 ally. I think there are a couple of interesting cards. I would speculate, maybe hot take it, that I think that Pirate Peddlers is actually a good card. It's a 3 mana 2/2 with Death Touch. When another creature, when you sacrifice another permanent, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Problem with those kind of creatures a lot of the time is you draw them late and they're just rubbish because it's like an overpriced 2/2. Death Touch on this thing allows it to trade late game with like really big things. And if you draw it early and you trigger it a couple of times, it becomes a big threat on its own. June Bounty Hunter, I think, is a very interesting card. It can't be blocked as long as you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn, and you can sacrifice a permanent for 1 mana, and you create a clue token, and you can activate that only during your turn. So you can basically sack something, get a clue. This becomes unblockable, and you can do some trickery with that later because next turn you can sacrifice a clue. Jody, one of many, I think is an interesting card. It's like 1 black for a 2/2. You can black tap surveil 1. You create a token that is a copy of this creature. So you create another Jody. Then you sacrifice an artifact or a creature, activate only as a sorcery. So obviously, in like worst case scenario, you just use it, you sacrifice the copy that you just created, and you get a surveil 1 and a sacrifice trigger. Good situation. You get like some kind of a repeatable way of creating tokens. There are a couple. There's like a Black Trebuchet that when you attack every turn, you generate the 2/1 flying boulder that only exists until the end of the turn. But it means that you have time during the rest of your turn to sacrifice it to Jody or any other sacrifice outlet to generate some value out of it. And I think that, the Trebuchet itself is a 3 mana 0/4 defender with reach. But if you have ways of generating unblockable attacks, like let's say with June the Bounty Hunter, you can create this value engine where you create those boulders, sacrifice them to something else, and move on with your life. The signpost is Toils of War, white black for an enchantment. Create a clue when it enters, and then whenever you sacrifice a permanent during your turn, you create a 1/1 ally token once per turn. But that's another way of you sacrifice, you get another sacrifice possibility. I don't know why, but the MTG bot does not work, unfortunately. So something went wrong with that. And this is the Sam's version of that deck. He built it slightly different than I did. So there is no Court Official. There is no Callous Inspector, because I think that the plan was to make it predominantly a white deck. How? Because he had to fit in Sokka. That's basically why. But there's a bunch of 2-drops. There is the Jung's Deserters, which are a 2-mana 1/2 that puts a counter on something when it enters. I assume that you put counters on something else, and then you have the Jung's Deserters as your sacrifice fodder. There's the Pending Pox Bearers, the hybrid common that we talked about that dies into a 1/1. There is Vindictive Warden from Black-Red deck, the 2/3 Fire Menace Firebending 1 creature that for 3 mana pings for 1. And I think that the idea is that you do some early damage, and then you start doing either chip damage, gain some incremental value with things like Sokka, use things like Airbending Lesson as it should be as a repulse to basically clear the board for your smaller things, generate relatively reasonably wide board because he's got Kyushu Warriors, and then maybe gain some tempo value with things like Ang, the Last Airbender, which can also airbend something while putting a 3/2 body on board. So I think that what Sam wanted to build here is not strictly a sacrifice deck, because he doesn't even have the sacrifice removal. He doesn't have that many sacrifice.
Deadly Precision is what it's called.
Deadly Precision, yeah, there you go, thank you. He's more focusing on a black-white tempo deck, which is also an interesting approach to it. And I guess that depending on how many Airbending lessons are you going to get, are you going to be able to get. I'm pretty sure that early in the format you're going to get quite a lot of them. But the later you go, the more that card is going to be popular because it looks pretty powerful. So this is the white dominant version of the white-black sacrifice deck rather than the sacrifice itself. Because Sam cannot just go with the basics, and that's why we love him. A truly a worthy replacement of Jason's colorful archetypes from a couple of sets ago.
So if you were more sacrifice based, you would want the what's it called? The black 1-drop that dies into a
yeah, the Callous Inspector. I'm pretty sure that things like Beetle-Headed Merchants are also going to be good in the sacrifice version. That 5 mana 5/4, when it attacks, you can sacrifice something and you draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Yeah.
I think that Joe D is very interesting. Even you can think of something like Vengeful Villagers, the 3 and a white for a 3/3. When this attacks, you tap something, and if you sacrifice something on top of that, you put a stamp counter on that thing. So that might be an interesting for a more aggressively built version of that sacrifice deck, where you have
like how many different combinations of pieces here can potentially put together a small engine. You know,
yeah.
A lot of times it's like, you know, you'll see like the sacrifice theme in whatever set, you know, black, red, or whatever, and you'll have like a couple of A pieces and a couple of B pieces. But if you're missing one key card or you don't have 2 key cards, you don't have it. But you can see several different combinations here that can work. I mean, I
think it's very redundant, the white-black, yes. And it's very well supported, and I'm looking forward to playing it a lot. I think it's a very powerful combination. Like, I was looking, we didn't do the grading of which combinations we think are the strongest, but for me, white-blue, white-black looked one of the top contenders, like, you know, top 4 or something. Okay.
Did you have any discussion earlier? I apologize if you repeat, but did you have any discussion earlier about which bending abilities you thought would be the best or the most prominent in the set?
No, we did not have. But okay, give us your version. Let's see if we agree.
Yeah, it seems like you have thoughts.
I do. I think that that one of the reasons that they made fewer airbending cards may very well have come out of playtesting, because I think that airbending is the most powerful of the abilities because of its utility in a number of different places. I suspect numerous shenanigans are going to come out of the use of that ability throughout this set, even ones beyond what we're seeing now. And then second to that, in my opinion, is Earthbending, because Earthbending is just going to create so many creatures out of nowhere. And
Sure.
it is such a big deal to me that those lands are not destroyed. That
Yeah,
they come
and
back as lands. I mean,
haste is always underappreciated.
oh my gosh,
isn't it?
I mean, the different things that can come out of nowhere. I mean, anything that has instant speed that's capable of Earthbending is going to be incredible. And so, man, that's my opinion initially. What about the two of you?
I think that I think we briefly touched when we described the mechanics. I said that airbending seems the most powerful to me, but it's also like not going to be accessible at, especially that there's only like one common with airbending, and
Yeah.
I think
And we all like
further,
it.
I think that I put it as the top common for the set, and Sam put it as the third best common for the set because we filled in the top card predictions for this particular set. And we agree, I think, with Sam about airbending lesson and firebending lesson. I put a more proactive blue creature in my top three, and Sam put a bit more controlling blue creature as their prediction for the top common. So we generally agree. We definitely disagree on uncommons, but I can totally take any of those 6 cards as a very strong uncommon. So that's something I can.
I haven't put in my predictions yet, but I'll make sure to do that before you send out the slides.
Yeah, cool. That would be nice to have. Okay, but with that, I think that we have to finish because it's also like 1:15 at
Yeah.
this. So I'm a bit 12th round heavyweight boxing, and I am not even heavyweight. I'm not even welterweight. I'm probably like bantam or something. Which means I'm not ready for that kind of a combat at all.
Okay. The chat is discussing if there's instant speed Earthbending. There's a white instant that Earthbending 3 for 4 mana, and maybe some other abilities that I'm not 100% clear on. But there are some tricky ways to Earthbend. I also just don't think like it's usually not like that helpful to think of like which mechanic is strongest, right? Like because like there's going to be some cards with Earthbending that are going to be very good. I think Airbending Lesson is a very strong card, and it's a common, so it's going to be pretty defining in the format. And so we're going to like think that like Airbending is strong. You're going to have some like Firebending cards that are not very good, and you're going to have some others that have the right combination of numbers and payoff that it works out well, And then Waterbending is almost not a mechanic. It's just like different ways to pay for things, and it's all different. So it's very hard to compare these things,
Yeah, waterbending is oil.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, at least there's not like things that care about how many cards you've waterbended this turn, but maybe there is. I don't know. I haven't studied this.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, waterbend is more like a supplementary kicker mechanic, which is fine, and it will be card by card. It's not like a coherent thing, but it will enhance certain themes. Like having clues is gonna be good because you can additionally get like free mana from that. Same with firebending. This is a free mana mechanic, and free mana mechanics can be good if you build your deck to abuse it, because you need to build your deck right to abuse it. So I think that early in the format, the issues people are going to be running is that they are going to maybe suboptimally devise their decks, and then they will say, well, firebending doesn't do anything for me. And then over time it will be, oh, well, actually, if I start including this card, all of a sudden my firebending is doing a lot to me. And I think that, Sam's idea of putting Fire Nation attacks as a top uncommon shows that he is a strong believer in the fact that firebending can be a strong mechanic, and especially with a card like this.
Combat tricks.
Oh, yeah. I think that the +3/+1 combat trick is going to be, that makes a clue, is going to be undervalued for a majority of the early format, and it's going to be pretty solid.
I mean, that card was already pretty good in MKM, and here you're spotted in the mana.
And here it's free.
Exactly, yeah. It becomes 3/3/1 draw a card, which is great. And then get your sacrifice synergy stuff, because like that Rakdos cares about that.
One last comment about
my question: Do I believe in this set? And this is my last purchase for my fledgling popper collection. I just bought 3 pop quizzes because those lessons are busted, and it would be nice to get them and instant speed by learning them.
the one more comment to the chat mention about instant speed earthbending abilities. You have to look at triggers also.
There's
the 2-mana 1/1 that says when another ally you control enters Earthbend 1, and then you have a 2-mana white card that is flash, ally enters and create another ally, right? So all of a sudden you have bodies everywhere. And the fact that earthbending to create chump blockers that never ever go away because they just become a land again, and then you earthbend them again, and then they chump again and they become a land again, is just there's your flavor from the show, by the way. Just, I can bring rocks out of everywhere and they're infinite shields and you can never touch me. So
I did make a archetype for shrines if you wanted to look at it very briefly, but I know that you guys it's already pretty late.
I'm good.
Okay, that's fair. I don't believe in it super strongly, but I think I'm very excited to draft it.
I think that it's going to be interesting. As I said at the beginning of this podcast, I think that it's a very well laid trap, because I know it's a trap, but I'm still going to fall into it. So
but like Aang, I think Aang, the Last Airbender, is kind of a glue card, right? The uncommon, because he cares about I think he's gonna like glue a lot of stuff together because he cares about lessons.
I mean, it's busted also.
Yeah, in
which
the airbend stuff, which shrines love to be airbended.
It's a 3/2 flying mana war for 4 mana. Pretty good.
And with lifelink.
And with occasional lifelink, yes. That is good in my book. All right, Zaki, what can you plug for us today?
Oh, what can I? Oh, you know what I'll plug? It's not even this year, but next year. If you're in Minnesota, there's going to be a cube and limited tournament called the Shoebox, and I think that's going to be a really fun event. And
if only we had someone from Minnesota that could go to that.
Oh, I believe Trescio will be there. Will you not? It's Team Trios.
That's correct.
What character should you pick up purely's? That's a great question. But if I would like to use my plug to say, come to the Shoebox and support. If you're in Minneapolis, support the Twin Cities Brew Crew. They're a group of fine folks that put on limited events and commander events all throughout the city. I love the work that they did. They did a great job with Cardboard of Cause 2025. And if you participate with that, we appreciate you very much. Keep supporting the work that they do.
Cool. Trezio, what do you have to plug, announce, endorse?
Watch for me streaming at Early Access in a couple of days.
Hey.
If you want to see some sealed content and have some conversations surrounding building sealed pools in preparation for pre-release on Friday.
Cool. It's been awesome to have both of you. Good to get your insights and good to get as much context as we physically can on this set. It looks like it's going to be a banger, finally, after the Spider-Man, which, well, not only was not the greatest set, which I think is universally agreed upon. It was not as bad as people have painted it, but you can't ignore the fact that if community doesn't like something, it's doomed to fail. And I think that this one looks pretty good, and I'm really hoping that the community will deliver, love it, and we're going to get a banger of a set.
Well, and I think you're going to get some inevitable positive rebound on this set from exactly what you just said, too.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's and Vivi is banned, so again, did nothing wrong. Paid for Agatha Cauldron's sins. But here we are. The mob is happy. The mob has won. No more Vivi.
The woke mob coming for our 0-mana activated abilities.
Yeah, well, I mean, proliferation of 0-mana abilities by the use of Cauldron was bad. I agree with that. I am a beneficiary, of course, of that nepotistic system, but it was too broken. Vivi was a broken deck, but Vivi as a card probably could have stayed. And if you banned Profts and Cauldron, but they wanted to ban Vivi because people hate Vivi by now, and it's also fine. We'll find something else to do. Busted. I just getting my Kaitos, and let's move on with our lives. All right.
That's how they trick you. Is that every time there's a ban season, people think that Dimir mid range is like, it's their time,
and it
it's
always
never
is for the first week until people
Yeah,
figure out
that's
better things.
basically it. Yeah.
I'm
So-
pretty sure that the Avatar is going to introduce some nice decks. There's the Worlds coming in, and that's Avatar is going to include that. So we hopefully are going to see some new decks that are going to be the source of complaints of the community and will be ruining Standard for the foreseeable 3-4 months. Okay, but with that, I will also try, hopefully, maybe to do some streaming on Wednesday. I will see how my computer can cope streaming from Arena, but I got a new one, so there's a chance at least that it won't combust while I'm trying to stream with OBS. And if not, I'm just going to write a nice thread of all the decks that I drafted with some thoughts on Thursday instead. And yeah, next week I'm going to start looking at the early data of the new format and